Chapter 251. Uncle, are you also here to attend my parents' funeral? Because Su Xinxing was in a daze, the girl asked curiously. Yes, that's right. Su Xinxing nodded reflexively. Then he suddenly realized, what the hell is an uncle? Do I look like I'm that old? I'm only 5 years older than you, okay? Are you a relative on my mother's side or my father's side? I'm your brother. In the end, Su Xinxing didn't say this sentence out loud. He just answered casually, I'm on your mother's side and in terms of blood I'm quite close, but I've never seen you before, the girl said with certainty. Her pair of limpid eyes were fixed on Su Xinxing. Even the latter, whose face was already thick enough to withstand the starship's main cannon, felt a little uncomfortable under her gaze. Because I have some conflicts with your mother. Since you were born I've never seen her again. It's normal that you don't know me. Su Xinxing explained dryly, just like how I don't know you. By the way, what's your name? Tetsi. Isn't your father's surname Chao? I took my mother's surname. The girl's expression said, you don't even know this? Are you here to freeload? Which made Su Xinxing very embarrassed. I'm here for business. The one who wants to freeload is Mo Li, okay? Unfortunately he couldn't say this out loud. How's your hand? So Su Xinxing tried to change the topic. I heard that it's fractured. Yes, the doctor said that it will take another 2 months to remove the cast. The girl nodded with a sad expression. Obviously, this topic reminded her of the previous car accident. Realizing that he had messed up, Su Xinxing hurriedly changed the topic again. Is this a hibiscus tree? This time he set his sights on the few hibiscus trees in the parterre that did not fit in with the surrounding environment. This kind of thing is not common around here. My father planted it himself when I was born. He said that before my mother was pregnant with me he dreamed of a lush hibiscus tree. The next day my mother found out that I was pregnant with her at the hospital. Initially he wanted to name me Hibiscus, but the fortune teller said that my fate wasn't suitable to have too many hibiscus in my name, so he changed it to Chuketsu. He seemed to have accidentally stepped on a bomb again. But this way Su Xinxing also understood why the girl was staring at the hibiscus trees in a daze. It turned out that there was such a reason behind it. Compared to the large villa occupied by a group of strangers, it was clear that these few hibiscus trees were more suitable for the girl's longing for her parents. Just as Su Xinxing was still hesitating whether he should try to find a new topic, the girl suddenly said softly, my parents were killed. What? Although the girl's voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz, Su Xinxing still heard it with his extraordinary hearing. This surprised our protagonist and at the same time made his heart sink. Even if he did not have a good impression of his biological mother, and they had not seen each other since he was 5 years old, no matter what, she was still his biological mother. If the car accident was just an accident, then it would be fine. But if there was really someone behind it, then at least he had to find the culprit and avenge his biological mother. It could also be considered as repaying his biological mother's kindness for bringing him into this world. Do you know anything? Su Xinxing asked the girl in a low voice. Some time before my parents were killed, a strange thing appeared in our house. It was like a black shadow and it always disappeared in a flash. Occasionally at night its footsteps would be heard in the corridor. The girl seemed to have recalled something terrifying, and her petite body trembled slightly. I told my parents and the nanny, but they didn't believe me. Children generally had a stronger sense of perception than adults, so most of the time, children were more likely to see supernatural creatures. Although Su Xinxing did not do much research in this area, he used to read in various literature books, such as Babies Can See Ghosts, so most of the time, they will act strangely or suddenly cry, and so on. Compared to boys of the same age, girls were more likely to encounter ghosts due to their overall fate. The day before the accident I was playing in the yard with my father and then I saw at the window on the 3rd floor of the north side of the villa, there was the girl turned her head and pointed at the villa, probably wanting to point out the thing she saw to Su Xinxing, but she stopped halfway through her words. Su Xinxing, who felt strange, glanced at her and found that the girl's face was pale, and her expression was frightened. Her pupils had shrunk as if she had seen something terrifying. Su Xinxing looked in the direction her finger was pointing and he was slightly stunned. In the window she pointed out, a black shadow with snow-white eyes was looking down at them. Using the window as a reference, the black shadow's physique was much stronger than a human's. Its shoulder width was more than 1. 5 meters, and its height was about 3 meters as high as Jiangjin. If it was purely seen as a silhouette, although it looked like a human at first glance, it did not have a head upon closer inspection. What Su Xinxing originally thought was its eyes was actually closer to its chest. The curse is not over. The girl beside Su Xinxing's legs went weak and she collapsed to the ground, her whole body trembling uncontrollably. Her small face was frighteningly pale without a trace of blood. Its next target is me? Su Xinxing also came to at this time and waved his hand. Emily, meow meow meow. Su Xinxing weakly covered his forehead. Perhaps feeling that Su Xinxing's reaction was not right, Emily used his hand to make a cat's ear shape on his head. Meow meow meow? I didn't ask you to act cute. Let me see the atmosphere. Su Xinxing felt even more exhausted. Although it was indeed very cute, I'm going to investigate that thing. Do you want to come with me? The deeply sealed Emily who had turned into a young girl was temporarily unreliable, so Su Xinxing decided to personally go. He asked Chiketsu. I'll investigate. The girl blinked her eyes as if she did not understand Su Xinxing's meaning. Investigate. A verb, generally speaking, it refers to conducting an investigation in order to understand the situation, Su Xinxing said seriously. I didn't mean that. Aren't you afraid? The girl asked in surprise. I've never believed in these supernatural things. I only believe in my own fists. Su Xinxing continued to answer seriously and secretly added in his heart, also my sword and Emily's Italian cannon. Chapter 252. According to Chiketsu, the north side of the third floor of the villa was originally used to store miscellaneous items. Usually, other than the servants of the villa who routinely cleaned the place, almost no one would go there. In the few days after she first saw the black shadow, she had asked the servants who were in charge of cleaning about the situation there. However, the servants did not find anything strange. The little girl did not have the courage to go there herself, so in the end the matter was left unsettled. However, after discovering that there was something suspected of being unclean in her house, the little girl began to become a little paranoid. Not only did she stick to her parents all day long, she did not even dare to turn off the lights to sleep at night. In the end, her parents had no choice but to take her to a psychiatrist. After saying this, the girl did not continue speaking, but Su Xinxing could almost guess that the car accident must have happened when the girl's parents took her to see a psychiatrist. Are we really going? The girl behind Su Xinxing was like a newborn quail, trembling as she asked anxiously. If he remembered correctly, this was the 12th time she had asked this question. If you're really scared, you don't have to go. Emily and I are enough. Su Xinxing sighed. Originally, he wanted the girl to go with them so that she could give him directions or something. However, the girl had been hiding behind him all this time. She did not even dare to look forward, let alone give him directions. The expression on Chiketsu's face was constantly changing like an amoeba. It was obvious that she was struggling in her heart. After a while, she raised her head. Although her frightened look did not change, her watery eyes revealed a look full of determination. I want to go. At least I want to know what killed my parents. Su Xinxing showed some appreciation. He was now considered to have seen a lot. When a normal person encountered a supernatural phenomenon that was enough to destroy their worldview, he naturally knew how terrible their reaction would be. In fact, even some supernatural enthusiasts would be afraid when they came into contact with a real supernatural phenomenon. That kind of love was based purely on the mentality of seeking novelty. After all, it was just a hobby of Yigong. But Ichiyue was different. She was obviously afraid of that kind of thing. In this case, even if she didn't go, no one would blame her. But in order to give an explanation to her deceased parents, she still wanted to go with Su Xinxing to the place where the black shadow was, even if she was shaking like a vibrating phone. Originally, Su Xinxing thought that if they wanted to go upstairs, they would have to use the high-class marble stairs in the central hall. This was because he had wandered around the villa twice and could not find the other stairs. The problem was that the central hall looked like a mourning hall, and there was a group of people mourning in the mourning hall. It was obviously not an atmosphere where they could casually go upstairs. Just as he was considering whether he should simply find a piece of black cloth to cover his face and bring the two girls to barge in, the girl who had been timidly following behind him opened her mouth to speak. Turn right here. Su Xinxing was stunned at first because if they turned left, they would reach the main hall. If they turned right, who knew which corner they would end up in? But he immediately reacted. Damn it, the owner of this villa is here. It won't be difficult to find another staircase. Not long after, the girl led Su Shinxing and Mo Li to a hidden wooden spiral staircase. According to Chuketsu, this staircase was usually used by the servants when they went out to fool around with her father or when they were escaping from her mother's pursuit because of their fooling around. This information was so overwhelming that Su Shinxing could not help but wonder what his mother was like after she remarried. Why did it feel like she was so fierce? Without further ado, with Chuketsu leading the way, Su Shinxing quickly arrived at the corridor on the north side of the third floor. The layout of the corridor was not much different from the rest of the villa. The only difference was that there were not many windows and there were some problems with the design. The lighting was not good, so compared to the other corridors, it was a little darker. That thing just now was standing here, right? Su Shinxing walked to the window they saw in the courtyard and began to investigate. In any case, he thought that there were two possibilities for what happened in the courtyard. The first was, of course, that there was a monster lurking in the villa, trying to take the heads of the Chao couple and little Chuketsu. But if that was the case, the monster lurked in the house for so long without making a move. In the end, it ran outside to find a car and killed the Chao couple, leaving only the little girl alone. Felt a little strange. What was the meaning of lurking in the villa? The second possibility was that the black shadow was just a phantom. Additionally, this phantom had to be created through the principle of optics. Because traditional illusions that targeted at the brain or nerves of humans were as useless to Su Shinxing as using water splash on an iron shell chrysalis. To be honest, Su Shinxing was leaning towards the second guess. After all, if the monster could really stay in the villa for so long without anyone noticing, there was no need for it to pretend to be a ghost to scare the little girl, right? It could have just taken an axe or a kitchen knife and chopped the Chao couple to death behind them while they were asleep. At most, it would be difficult to deal with the aftermath. After chopping them into 17 or 18 pieces, it would be difficult to disguise it as a suicide or a love-hate relationship. However, after a careful investigation, Su Shinxing found some clues. Putting aside what the little girl saw a few days ago, at least just now, there was probably something standing here for a while. Because the two masters of the house were in trouble, and the little girl was hospitalized because of a fracture, the servants in the house did not clean the house according to their usual habits. As a result, there was a lot of dust on the ground. Ordinary people would not be able to see it with their poor eyesight, but Su Shinxing could see a pair of unusual large footprints on the ground. Unfortunately, he was not a criminal investigation student, so he could not see anything from the footprints. In addition, there seemed to be some strange dust on the windowsill and near the footprints. This made Su Shinxing a little concerned. He touched his pocket, took out a 1 yuan bill and wrapped the dust in the bill. He planned to ask Xingyan Meng if she recognized this kind of dust when he went back. Just as Su Shinxing was about to continue looking for other clues in the vicinity, his phone rang. In the slightly dim, empty and quiet corridor, the three of them were seriously investigating a supernatural mystery. In this situation, which was quite like a horror story, suddenly, a burst of singing broke the silence, causing Chuketsu to look at Su Shinxing with a complicated gaze. The latter thickened his skin and coughed dryly before picking up the phone. "I'm your aunt." "Ahem. I'm still your ahem aunt. What's the matter?" Su Shinxing subconsciously wanted to complain, but then he remembered that the number seemed to be his aunt's phone number, so he coughed dryly and corrected himself. "Where did you go, kid?" His aunt's voice sounded a little dissatisfied. "Wandering around." Su Shinxing thought for a while and answered concisely. "Forget it." His aunt seemed to be choked by his answer, then sighed. "There's something important now. Hurry up and come back to the hall, okay?" "Okay." Chapter 253. Although Su Shinxing still had a lot of doubts about the Black Shadow, since her aunt had spoken, there was no reason for her to go against her. And if the target of the Black Shadow was really Chuketsu-e, then it would appear again sooner or later. As long as she was mentally prepared, Su Shinxing was confident that she could kill it in a flash. The only thing she had to be careful about was how much strength she used. Otherwise, the mysterious disappearance of a luxury villa would probably make the headlines the next day. Not long after Su Shinxing brought Chuketsu back to the living room under her aunt's meaningful gaze, the middle-aged man with the surname Chao gestured for everyone to go to the room that was probably the dining room, leaving behind a few crying people. "Although I'm very sad about my brother's death, now is not the time to be immersed in sorrow." The middle-aged man with the surname Chao seemed to be quite popular in Su Shinxing's stepfather's family. His style was also a little overbearing. As soon as he arrived at the dining room, he sat down at the main seat and looked around at everyone. Other than a blonde girl with double ponytails who seemed to be muttering something like, "Why isn't there food in the dining room?" or "I'm hungry." Everyone else was quietly listening to him. Because my brother's death was a little sudden, he didn't leave a will. Because of this, his considerable wealth will inevitably attract the covetous eyes of some rascals. As he spoke, he glanced at the girl's family, who were spontaneously sitting on the other side of the table, as if to say that they were the so-called rascals. It just so happens that I have an important position in my brother's company. Although my words can't be taken seriously, at least they have some weight. He scanned the crowd and found Chiketsu, who was subconsciously following Sushinshing. He then flashed the girl a smile that he thought was amiable, scaring the girl into hiding behind Sushinshing. "Why don't I temporarily manage the company and adopt my niece? When my niece grows up, I'll return the family business to her. What do you think?" "That sounds good. Who knows if you'll just eat up your brother's family business and leave an empty shell for Chiketsu's girl." When the girl's family saw that the middle-aged man was eating meat while they couldn't even get a mouthful of soup, let alone shredded meat, someone immediately jumped out to object to Ali's suggestion. Uncle Chow's face changed. Although he did plan to do so, how difficult would it be for him to transfer the funds of his brother's family business to that company while he had great power? After all the transfer, these assets would have nothing to do with his niece. If that girl was sensible enough, it didn't matter if she ate well and drank well. In the future, she could be used as a bargaining chip in the business world to make profits for him through marriage with other rich families. If she dared to have any thoughts that she shouldn't have as her guardian, it would be easy for him to punish her. However, it didn't matter if this kind of thing was done in private. It didn't matter even if everyone knew about it. But once it was exposed, no matter how thick-skinned he was, he couldn't sit still. "This man looks a little unfamiliar. May I know who you are? What's your relationship with my brother?" He hated him in his heart, but he couldn't show it too obviously. Otherwise, it would be bad if others thought that he had a guilty conscience. Since the other party was sitting with the girl's family, it wouldn't be difficult to make the connection. Since the family business was built up by his brother, he could just use this as a starting point and ask about the relationship between the other party and his brother. No matter how close the girl's family was, could they be closer than him? "Mr. Chow, your words are meaningless. This family business will belong to Chiketsu in the future, but Chiketsu's surname isn't Chow," the girl's relative said in a carefree manner. These words were used to push the trap in Uncle Chow's words. It was quite clever. "Oh. Then what do you plan to do?" Uncle Chow asked coldly when he saw the duck that was about to jump up and fly away. He was so angry that he laughed and asked coldly, "Of course, everyone will have a share." The other party seemed to have guessed that Uncle Chow would ask this question. He answered without thinking, "Although there's only one company, we can share the shares. Everyone here will have a share. Those who adopted Chiketsu's daughter will have double the shares." Originally, many of the relatives who weren't very close to the deceased thought that they wouldn't have anything to do with this and were ready to watch the show. They didn't expect that when the girl's relatives said this, even they who were just bystanders would have a share of the benefits. They immediately cheered loudly and supported the leader of the girl's relative. Even many of the man's relatives started to change sides. Uncle Chow saw that the possibility of him taking the fat meat alone was very slim. He couldn't help but snort coldly, "Of course I'll adopt my niece, but I want half of the shares." "What a big appetite. Aren't you afraid of dying from overeating?" the girl's relative sneered in his heart. This uncle didn't repent even after angering everyone. He didn't understand the principle of fairness at all. He really lived like a dog. "How about this? After we split the shares, the person who adopted Chiketsu's daughter can have 3 shares. You can also take this villa. If you don't want to adopt her, I'll take care of her." When they heard that adopting Chiketsu's daughter would have such great benefits, some of the other relatives also spoke up one after another, saying that their place was more suitable for the little girl to live and grow up. Suddenly, the restaurant was as noisy as a wet market. Just as this quarrel was about to evolve into a brawl between hooligans, a loud bang startled everyone, and the entire restaurant fell into an eerie silence. Everyone's eyes were focused on one person. Su Shinxing was still pounding the table as he coldly looked around at everyone. The long marble table, which could theoretically withstand more than a ton of weight, was directly broken into two from where he stood. Everyone who was swept by his gaze lowered their heads guiltily. No one felt that their bodies could be stronger than the marble table. It was only then that Sushinshing turned his head and looked at Chiketsu, who was also startled. The little girl still had tears in the corners of her eyes, but it wasn't because she was frightened by Sushinshing's actions. Instead, it was because her relatives had made a fool of themselves when they fought for the ownership of the villa and 3 times the shares. She couldn't help but sob. Although Sushinshing didn't particularly understand why the little girl was crying, Sushinshing was certain that it was definitely not because of these people's enthusiasm for adopting her. Rather, Sushinshing was very unhappy with the feeling of giving the little girl a price tag. "Let me reintroduce myself. I'm your half-brother. My name is Sushinshing." He reached out his hand to the girl. "I don't need the villa or the shares. Do you want to live with me? Of course, your life will be a little poor." Chiketsu stared blankly at him for a few seconds. Then, like a small animal, he shakily put his hand in Sushinshing's hand. "Wait a minute, little brother, I'm afraid this is not in line with the rules." The uncle surnamed Chow wanted to say something, but after Sushinshing glared at him, he was speechless. "Shut up." He coldly snorted. "What's wrong with a sister living with a brother?" Chapter 254. Although some relatives seemed to want to have a friendly discussion about Sushinshing's argument, Sushinshing didn't want to waste time with them. He held Chiketsu's hand and led the girl and Emoli, who was still angry because he didn't get to eat, out of the restaurant. On the way out, a few strong young men intentionally or unintentionally blocked the door, as if they wanted to block Sushinshing from leaving by forming a human wall. However, Sushinshing snorted, turned around and walked towards the door, and directly crushed the tiles on the floor. Coupled with the broken marble table behind him, the young men's faces suddenly turned as white as the tiles that were hit by an unexpected disaster. Obviously, they didn't want to be crushed to death and silently made way for Sushinshing. Thus, Sushinshing easily broke out of the restaurant with Chiketsu. "You're too reckless." Sushinshing's aunt also left with him. Although his aunt seemed to be curious about Sushinshing's ability to break the marble table with his bare hands and crush the tiles on the floor with his feet, these actions didn't exceed the limits of human beings in the eyes of most people. Their impression of him was that of a martial arts master or a black belt in taekwondo. Sushinshing didn't answer and just silently walked towards the door. Chiketsu also lowered his little head and no one knew what he was thinking. He just followed Sushinshing, taking small steps, trying to keep up with his pace. "The landlord is angry," Emoli said expressionlessly, "because the food hasn't been served for so long." Sushinshing staggered when he heard that. "Landlord?" Sushinshing's aunt was puzzled by the way Emoli addressed Sushinshing. "It's just a small problem of this girl." Sushinshing stopped and let go of Chiketsu's hand. He then turned around and pinched Emoli's chubby little face with a fake smile. "Do you think I'm like you?" Emoli wasn't afraid at all, but stared at Sushinshing with her big cute eyes. "The monofilament anti-freezing mud shredded by 80%. But the landlord is really angry, right?" Sushinshing was stunned for a moment, then he let go of Emoli's little face and let Emoli cover her little face, her cheeks puffed up in anger. After all, he and Emoli could be said to be of the same mind. Even if the girl was in a deep seal, it wasn't strange that she could feel his feelings. "You can say that." He smiled bitterly and patted Chiketsu's little head. Looking at his curious eyes, he couldn't help but sigh. "I'm sorry. Although it seems like I'm angry because of you, but it's more about myself." Hearing him say that, Chiketsu showed a puzzled expression and Emoli, well, the little girl was still puffing up her cheeks like a golden squirrel storing food, with an expression that said, "I'm angry, I won't get up until I get something good to eat." On the other hand, Sushinshing's aunt showed a look of understanding. When Sushinshing's parents divorced, he was only 5 years old. 5 years old was the time when a child could really remember things. Unfortunately, the first memory of Sushinshing's life was not a good one. The figure of his mother, whom he once deeply missed, resolutely abandoned him, leaving behind a heartless figure and disappeared from his life. And his father was an extremely unreliable person. Although Sushinshing was relatively restrained when he was young, but even so he still disappeared for a period of time every year to go out on so-called scientific research expeditions. In the huge Sakura apartment, Sushinshing was the only one left. When he fell, no one came to help him. When he was hungry, there was no food in the pot. When he cried, no one came to wipe his tears. When he came home from school, he was always greeted by an empty house. Every time at the parents' meeting, he could only hold his report card and look enviously at the warm interactions between other children and their parents. Be strong. Every time Sushinshing would say this to himself. Even if he was alone, he could live a good life. Therefore, when he fell, he would grit his teeth and stand up, and then use the medicine box to treat his wounds. If he had no food, he would learn to cook by himself. Even if the food he made at first was no different from coke, he would try to swallow it so that he could cook better next time. He set a limit for himself that he could only cry once a year, and the only place he could cry was on the roof where he could see the moon. It didn't matter if there was no one at home because he had gradually become accustomed to loneliness. He thought that he could live like this forever. When he was about 9 years old, he lost contact with his father for more than half a year because of an accident. Almost all his relatives thought that his father had died. So they came to compete for the inheritance, which was the ownership of Sakura apartment. Unfortunately, Sushinshing was different from Chiketsu. He was not a likable child, so no one planned to adopt him. Because all the people who came were from his father's side, even his aunt, who was the only one who was kind to Sushinshing, was not present. It was not until later that she heard about this matter. Hearing that his relatives used all kinds of excuses to push him around like goods, and in the end they all wanted to send him to an orphanage, Sushinshing felt sad and angry at the same time. He did not know whether his father was dead or not, but he did not want to go to an orphanage. He was not an orphan. So he insisted that his father was still alive, took a kitchen knife from the kitchen, and drove all the so-called relatives out of the house. After all, as a minor, Sushinshing did not have to take responsibility even if he killed someone. Those relatives were afraid that he, a hothead, would really make big news, so they all fled. Some of them wanted to get Sakura apartment to intervene through legal means. Fortunately, Sushinshing's father came back in time, so Sushinshing was not driven out of his house. From then on, Sushinshing decided that he would no longer entrust his hopes to others. No matter how difficult it was, he would try his best to solve all the problems. It was also because of this that after he went to another world, even if his body was cut in half, even if his organs were pulled out, even if the person he loved the most died for him, even if he saw the destruction of the world with his own eyes, he did not despair. In the end, he destroyed the great devil realm and returned to this world. Sitting in his aunt's car, Sushinshing sat in the front passenger seat and told the three of them about his past. He did not want to gain their sympathy, but simply wanted to explain why he was angry about Chiketsu's matter. He overlapped his past with the girl's current situation. That anger was not, at least not completely, because he wanted to seek justice for the girl, but because of his own past. After sending Sushinshing back to Sakura apartment, his aunt looked at Sushinshing. She wanted to say something, but in the end she did not say anything. After saying goodbye to Sushinshing, she drove away. "This is where you are going to live from now on." Sushinshing took out the key and introduced it to Chiketsu as he was about to open the door. "Brother, is this where you used to live alone?" Chiketsu, who had heard some of Sushinshing's stories in the car, curiously looked at the somewhat shabby Sakura apartment. "Yes." Recalling the lonely Sakura apartment, Sushinshing's face softened. Then he opened the door with the key. The smell of food wafted from the kitchen. Other than Songyu, there was also Asahi Sakura Kanji's voice. It seemed that the two of them were cooking. On the other hand, he could vaguely hear Earth Goddess Loli and Chihaya Fukuyama making a fuss as they played FC in the living room. "You're back." Not far from the entrance, Qin Xingyan, who was nestled in a leather chair, hid the half-knitted scarf with the word "Souk" on it behind her back. She said somewhat anxiously, "Why didn't you knock? I could have opened the door for you. It's just a whim." Sushinshing smiled. Now this apartment that used to be incomparably lonely had become lively. Chapter 255. Since her encounter with Sushinshing was not normal in a sense, Songyu was used to meeting unusual people in Sakura apartment. In fact, it was not only the tenants in the apartment, but even Sakura apartment itself, from the roof to the foundation, exuded a strong sense of mystery. Even though the owner, Sushinshing, repeatedly insisted that Sakura apartment was just an ordinary dilapidated apartment. For example, in the innermost room of the second-floor corridor where Sushinshing had forbidden her to enter, there was often a strange sound, as if someone was playing mahjong inside. In the courtyard outside the room, which was untended and overgrown with weeds, there was always a clump of peanut-like plants constantly changing its position. 2 days ago it was still near the door, but these days, it had run to the small pond that had long dried up. The girl was also sure that she had seen a staircase that seemed to lead to the basement behind her when she was cleaning the room. However, after she hesitated for a moment, the staircase disappeared and was replaced by an ordinary little cubicle with brooms and the like. After becoming numb to this strange phenomenon, Su Xinxing suddenly brought back a girl who did not have any supernatural abilities. Other than being very cute, she was just an ordinary girl in every aspect. This made Song Yu feel quite shocked. In order to prevent his sister from being afraid of the strange phenomena in Sakura apartment, Su Xinxing even rolled up his sleeves and blocked the door of the innermost room of the second-floor corridor with a wooden plank. Although she did not know what happened to the staircase leading to the mysterious basement, at least the peanut clump, or something that looked like peanuts, outside the courtyard had disappeared. Of course, maybe the peanut clump only sensed danger and hid in the weeds. In any case, Song Yu was happy that there was finally a normal person like herself in Sakura apartment, not to mention that the other person was someone who could become her sister-in-law. Therefore, the number of times she went to Sakura apartment recently had inexplicably increased. On this day, when she walked into Sakura apartment with ingredients, she heard Su Xinxing talking to Qin Xingyan. Speaking of Qin Xingyan, Song Yu was a little surprised. In her impression, Qin Xingyan was just a rustic but very quiet girl in school. Her grades were just average and she almost never went out to sing karaoke with other students. She was the obedient type and was not very popular among the boys. However, she did not expect that after taking off her glasses her temperament would change so much. In fact, the main credit was the magic attached to her eyes. She gave people a feeling that she was full of immortal aura. If she appeared in school in the way she did in Sakura apartment, she would be able to easily attract a group of fans, although her taste in clothes was still very rustic. Something like this black shadow. Su Xinxing seemed to be trying to describe a strange thing and then let Qin Xingyan guess its true form. Do you have any impression of this? Qin Xingyan thought for a while and finally shook his head. As far as I know, there should not be a creature with this appearance among the local monsters. What if it is not limited to monsters? Su Xinxing was silent for a moment and asked again. There were some ancient gods who looked like this. Senior, have you heard of Xingtian? The one who uses the nipple as the eyes, the navel as the mouth, and has to face the god of heaven's anus? Su Xinxing thought for a while and said with uncertainty. Yes, but in fact, there is another legend about Xingtian that is not so widespread. Qin Xingyan continued. Legend has it that a long time ago, a man-eating beast appeared on the earth. In order to suppress it, the tribes at that time united and sent a team of the strongest warriors, and Xingtian was among them. Those warriors found the beast and fought with it. In the end they finally captured and killed it in Changyang Mountain. However, there were only 2 warriors left in the team. One of them did not exert much strength during the battle and had been hiding all the time. It was not until the end of the battle that he attacked the other warrior who had made great contributions in the battle, which was Xingtian. In order to monopolize the glory of killing the beast, that person killed Xingtian, cut off his head and hid it in Changyang Mountain. He took the beast's body back to the tribe to receive the reward. In the end, Xingtian's resentment was not quenched. He dragged his headless body and went to the tribe to kill that despicable coward. However, his appearance was regarded as a monster by the people in the tribe and he was expelled. After that, Xingtian became a terrifying demon god who resented humans, especially treacherous villains. At this point, Qin Xingyan took a sip of tea, indicating that he was done. In other words, Qiuyu's parents did something treacherous and angered that thing. That's why they brought this disaster upon themselves. Su Xinxing quietly listened to her words and then muttered thoughtfully, "That's right. Thinking about it, there was nothing wrong with it. His biological mother left him and old man Su behind and ran away with a rich businessman. In a sense, it was treachery, right? I'm just saying, don't believe it too much." Qin Xingyan hurriedly waved his hand. No one knows what happened in the ancient times. The previous popular legend may be more credible. After all, there must be a reason for it to spread so widely. Who cares? Having a direction to investigate is better than not knowing anything. Su Xinxing rubbed his temples and said in distress, "I'm not good at this kind of investigation, but all I've encountered recently is this kind of F***king thing. When will there be a situation where I can just rush over and solve it? I'm serious, This kind of thing is not very credible. After all, the legend of Xingtian can be traced back to at least 3 or 4,000 years ago. You said that the black shadow was more likely than Xingtian. Qin Xingyan also sighed and said helplessly. Mothman? Su Xinxing asked curiously. When I went to the bookstore to look for knitting, I was looking for information and I accidentally came across a book about unidentified creatures. It recorded the story of the Mothman. Qin Xingyan frowned and tried hard to recall. Well, I don't remember the details, but its appearance is a little similar to what you described. Moreover, the Mothman itself is the representative of bad omens. It is said that as long as the Mothman appears, bad things will happen. The most famous of which is the Silver Bridge incident in West Virginia, the Kingdom of Hope. Forget it, whether it's the demon god Xingtian or Mothman. As long as we know their true forms, there's nothing to be afraid of. Su Xinxing stood up and seemed to be planning to go out. Because the villa in Chiketsu is a real estate, the group of relatives can't divide it up in the short term. I'll take this opportunity to go there again to investigate again. What about lunch? Song Yu, who was about to cook, hurriedly asked. Make me a bento. Su Xinxing hesitated for a moment, but in the end he did not refuse the girl's kindness. I'll eat slowly after I find that thing. Chapter 256. Chao Gu felt that things were not going well for him recently. He, who was approaching the age of 40, was still in a state of not having accomplished anything until the end of the year. However, he did not think that the reason was because of him. Even if he smoked, drank and gambled, he felt that he still had talents that others did not realize. The reason why he did not have any achievements was purely because he was not serious yet. Plus, he was a little unlucky and did not catch a good opportunity. As for his younger brother, who had worked hard to build a family business at a young age, he had always thought that the other party was just lucky. If he could rely on his brother's luck, he would definitely be able to start from scratch. No, he might even be able to do better. Chao Ji's parents probably couldn't stand Chao Gu idling around all day, so they talked to his younger brother at the beginning of the year. In the end, his younger brother compromised and recruited his brother, who didn't have a good reputation in his hometown, into his company and entrusted him with important tasks. In the end, things were still messed up by Chao Gu. A big client completely cut off contact with Chao Ji's brother's company because of this. Chao Gu did not care about this result. He had an expression that said, "This kind of small business, it doesn't matter if it's messed up." In desperation, Chao Ji's brother could only let his incompetent brother go to a department that looked very important but was actually quite idle. Chao Gu was quite satisfied with this arrangement at first. However, it did not take long for him to begin to complain about his brother's arrangement. He felt that with his own talent he should at least have a share of the human resources and financial power. However, these two rights were too important and even affected the normal operation of the company. Therefore, Chao Ji's brother had been shirking away and did not intend to give these two rights to his brother. Therefore, while Chao Gu secretly hated in his heart, he also began to use his brother's name to start trouble everywhere, making the whole company a little bit of a mess. In the end, his brother was angry and directly pushed him to the logistics department. Although in order to save the face of his parents, Chao Gu was not allowed to be a low-level errand boy. However, he was basically a marginal person who could only stay near the warehouse and would not appear in the company. Chao Gu, who felt that he was being bullied by his younger brother, was naturally very dissatisfied with this. However, at this point he no longer had the ability to fight back. In the end, he could only return to his idle life with his former group of bad friends while fishing for 3 days and drying his net. Originally, Chao Gu thought that this kind of life would continue until he was old. However, a few months ago he suddenly discovered an online gambling game called Wanjiala. In the beginning he had a small harvest and earned a lot of pocket money. In just 2 or 3 days the money he earned was even more than his salary. Therefore, Chao Gu felt that his talents were finally put to use. Instead of going to his younger brother's company and being bullied, it was better to lie comfortably at home and make money. Thus he was completely addicted to online gambling games. But he didn't expect his luck to keep getting worse. Not only did he lose the money he earned at the beginning, but he also lost the money he earned from his brother's company for more than half a year. As a result, he became poor. However, due to the mentality of a gambler, the more he lost, the more he wanted to recoup his losses. When he had no money in hand, he went to borrow from others. Naturally, the borrowed money was also wasted. When no one was willing to lend him money, he even went to borrow money from loan sharks despite his parents' dissuasion. In the end, he still lost everything. When the loan sharks began to come to collect the debt, he panicked and knew that he seemed to be in trouble. Just when he was planning to cheat some money from his relatively rich younger brother by hook or by crook, an accident happened. His younger brother had a car accident and died in the car accident with his wife, leaving only an underage niece. Suddenly, Chao felt that he was going to be rich. As long as he could take over his younger brother's business, not to mention loan sharks, even if it was dozens of times more, he could take it out. Originally, he thought that it was quite good. He planned to temporarily take over his younger brother's business under the pretext of adopting his niece. In the end, he did not expect that someone would come out of nowhere and cut him off and took away his niece. Even if the kid claimed that he was not interested in the inheritance in his niece's hands, Chao felt that he was definitely lying when he judged others by himself. What's more, even if the other party was really not interested in his younger brother's business, just based on the bad reputation that Chao had in the business in just half a year, without a legitimate right to take over, his younger brother's talents would not be convinced by him. What made him even more crazy was that even his younger brother's expensive villa, because the name on the property certificate was his niece's name, and he was not the guardian, he had no right to share it. Seeing that the loan sharks were getting more and more ferocious, Chao did not continue to dawdle. He decided to take a risk. Although that was what he said, in fact his plan was not that dangerous. Chao could not enjoy his younger brother's magnificent villa, but there were a lot of valuable things in the villa. In addition to his younger brother's elegant hobby, there were some authentic ancient paintings hidden in the house. Those ancient paintings were bought by his younger brother at the auction house at a high price. Now that so much time had passed, many of them were far more valuable than before. As long as he could steal one or two of them, the debt he owed would be basically paid off. If he could find the place where his younger brother hid the treasures, even if he could not control his younger brother's business, he could be a rich man for the rest of his life and live comfortably for the rest of his life. With this in mind, Chao bypassed the security guards at night and sneaked into his younger brother's villa. For others, this might be a bit difficult, but after all, Chao often came to his younger brother's house. Not only was he familiar with the road, but he had also secretly tampered with some of the surveillance cameras long ago, artificially creating a blind spot in the surveillance. As long as he paid attention to avoiding the security guards on patrol shifts, he would not be discovered. After spending more than half an hour, after using a stolen key to open a window in the blind spot, Chao successfully sneaked into his younger brother's original villa. The villa at night was more silent and terrifying than during the day. The deep corridor, the high ceiling, and the ticking of the clock made people involuntarily feel a sense of fear. Chao tried to calm the fear in his heart and began to explore the treasure room according to the route he had determined long ago. Chapter 257. Something's wrong. Chao walked in the dark corridor feeling a little uneasy. Because he was afraid of being discovered by the security guards outside, he didn't dare to turn on the lights, so now he didn't know his exact location. However, from the feeling of time, he felt that he had been walking in the corridor for at least 10 minutes. Logically speaking, even if his hand slipped and he didn't find the door he wanted to sneak in, he should have reached the end of the corridor. However, the corridor in front of him was still the same as before. It was dark and deep and he couldn't see the end. Not only that, even the window on the outside of the corridor that should have existed had disappeared at some point. This made the originally extremely dim corridor even darker. I can't go on like this. So he took out his mobile phone and used the flash on the camera as illumination. Risking the risk of being discovered, he carefully observed the surrounding situation while speeding up. What's going on? Where is this place? However, the more he walked, the more depressed he felt. He had been to his brother's villa many times. Although he couldn't say that he could walk to where he wanted to go with his eyes closed, he could be considered familiar with it. However, the surrounding scene was very unfamiliar. Rather than saying that he was in a Western-style manor house, it was more like a tunnel leading to an unknown place. The surroundings were seamless and there were no doors or windows. However, some decorative items such as hanging paintings and statues were still there. However, those things were also very abnormal. There was a hanging painting every 10 meters, but none of them was a normal rectangle. They were all strange shapes like the color blocks in abstract paintings, and some were even twisted like bitten apples. Even the shapes were so strange, not to mention the content. None of the paintings were normal. They all looked like postmodernist paintings. The strange colors mixed with things that didn't have the original appearance at all highlighted the feeling of madness. The statues were similar to the paintings, becoming strange and terrifying. At first glance they looked like centipedes, but in fact they were the amalgamation of many hands stacked together. Some looked like ordinary rockery, but there were huge eyes and half a frightened human face on it. Some looked like a middle-aged man holding his head in pain, but the lower half of his body was a fat four-legged monster like a pig. Some looked like exquisite stone chairs, but there was a half-melted human sitting on top of them. After looking at these sculptures one by one, Chao Ji's scalp went numb. At the same time, he was certain that this was definitely not his younger brother's villa. What should I do? He looked around in fear, trying to find a way out. Suddenly, some subtle sounds that were usually hard to detect but became very obvious in this quiet environment came from not far away. Chao Gu raised his head and saw a figure with the head of a deer and the body of a human. It was more than 3 meters tall and held a huge axe. What he thought was a statue actually turned its head and looked at him. Suddenly his heart skipped a beat. Without any hesitation he turned around and ran. Almost at the same time, a loud bang came from the statue, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Even without looking back, Chao Gu could guess that the statue had come alive and was chasing after him. What the hell is this? Chao Gu, who liked to read grave robber novels and movies, started to have strange thoughts in his head due to the lack of oxygen. Damn it, what kind of evil thing did my brother collect to cause such an incredible thing to happen? Suddenly he staggered and rolled down a flight of stairs that appeared out of nowhere. He fell to the ground and felt dizzy. His bones felt weak and numb, and all the bones in his body felt like they were falling apart. He was in so much pain that he didn't even have the strength to stand up. In his hazy consciousness he found that the room he was in was abnormally spacious. Compared to the dark corridor, it was much brighter. Immediately, the magnificent scenery around him made him realize that this was probably some kind of hall. However, before he could react, a shadow covered his face. His eyelids twitched and he looked at the shadow, only to see the head of a deer staring at him. It slowly raised the rusty axe in its hand. The next moment, in the large hall that looked like an ancient palace, there was a blood-curdling scream and the sound of a blunt axe cutting into flesh. Something was wrong. Su Shenxing walked down the dark corridor. He felt that the room wasn't as simple as he thought. Although he sneaked into the house physically, by making all the security guards doze off, because he couldn't control his strength well, he was afraid that the security guards wouldn't doze off for too long. He needed to solve the problem in the shortest time possible. Su Shenxing ate his lunch while thinking about what to do next. Ugh, there's actually prawns inside. Although prawns were the type that was raised lightly, Su Shenxing still couldn't help but cough because of the psychological trauma caused by his seafood allergy. By the time he came back to his senses, the scene around him seemed to be different from before. What happened? Where is this place? He put away the lunch box and scratched his head. Did I accidentally get lost? Although he had been to this villa before when he attended the funeral, he didn't take a good look around the villa at that time due to various reasons. Although this time he followed the route that Ichiyue took before and headed straight to the 3rd floor, it was understandable that he would end up in a strange place because he accidentally ate some prawns and became absent-minded. The more he walked forward, the more strange the surroundings became. Soon he found that he seemed to have mistakenly entered a strange space. Those paintings and statues full of arrogance did not cause too much trouble for Su Shenxing. When he was fighting in the great demonic realm, he had seen many monsters that were more abstract than these things. In fact, compared to some of the Demon King's army officers, these strange sculptures could already be considered cute. This level of mental pollution was useless to Su Shenxing. As he walked, he suddenly felt a strong gust of wind coming from behind his head. Su Shenxing didn't dodge. He just stretched out a finger. With a clang, the finger was embedded in the blade of a rusty axe. At this time, Su Shenxing turned his head and saw the thing that attacked him. It was a white statue with the head of an elk and the lower body of a naked human. By the way, the reason why it was described as a human was because the lower part of this thing was as bare as the models in the mall. There was nothing, so he couldn't tell its gender. What the hell is this? Su Shenxing flew up and kicked the sculpture over. After watching it fall to the ground and shatter into pieces, he felt a little regretful. Not good, I can't be the one to pay for breaking the statue here, right? After thinking for a few seconds, he decided to pretend that he didn't know anything and continue to explore this strange space. In fact, when the statue suddenly began to move, Su Shenxing felt that this space seemed to have changed. Chapter 258. Although Su Shenxing vaguely felt that some kind of change had occurred in this space, he was not the perceptive type, so he did not know what exactly had changed. After thinking for a while, Su Shenxing turned around and walked in the direction he came from. He did not intend to leave this space. In fact, after entering the different space, his original sense of direction was no longer sufficient. If he really wanted to leave here, he just needed to take out Roland Duel and swipe it casually. Su Shenxing chose to go back because he found a faint smell of blood coming from behind. Sure enough, he did not walk far before he found a staircase leading downwards in front of him. At first, the staircase was similar to the material of the corridor, giving a feeling of rough limestone, but the further down he went, the more exquisite it became. After about half a minute of walking, the entire staircase could be described as carved railings and made of jade. This is really... Su Shenxing touched the jade-colored handrail, and after confirming that this was not an illusion with his physique, he could not help but sigh. It's incredible. Although he had seen planets in the universe that were almost entirely made of gold, it was obviously more full of the feeling of nouveau riche compared to the current environment, but the yellow feces that filled his eyes at that time could not be compared to this scenery that was obviously carefully arranged. Maybe he could just casually pick a piece here and live a carefree life for a long time. However, Su Shenxing did not do so but continued to walk down the stairs. The deeper he went, the stronger the smell of blood became. Finally, when he reached the end of the stairs, a pile of minced meat that could no longer be distinguished appeared in front of him. The minced meat was soaked in dark red blood, and if he looked carefully, he could see some tattered cloth mixed in it. It was probably the original clothes of this pile of minced meat. Judging from the degree of decomposition, this pile of minced meat should have died not long ago. Whether it was the smell of blood or the minced meat itself, they were all very fresh. Su Shenxing had also encountered many corpses in the past battles, so he could still make this kind of judgment. However, the passage of time in the different space and the speed of decomposition of the corpses were not necessarily the same as on Earth, so this did not mean anything. Su Shenxing continued to look ahead. In front of the stairs was a very wide space. It even gave people the feeling that they were not in some kind of underground facility but on the surface. However, this was not the ground after all. With Su Shenxing's extraordinary eyesight, he could still see through the darkness and see the domed rock formations and stalactites above. Although the ceiling looked like an ordinary cave, the ground was paved with high-quality bluestone slabs. He just held the bronze cauldron's handle with one hand as if he didn't feel the hot temperature and punched the air with the other hand. This action didn't make any sound on the physical level, but Su Shenxing seemed to hear the sound of glass being broken. In the next moment, the surrounding scene shattered, and then the cauldron's fire and the corpse's head disappeared. Even the simple hall disappeared. When everything stopped changing, Su Shenxing found himself in a basement. The minced meat still lying at the door proved that everything just now was not an illusion. The bronze cauldron he was holding was also gone, replaced by a huge stone tablet that still had the smell of earth. It was probably dug out of the ground not long ago, and there were 3 big words written in Chuseal script on it. He could understand Su Shenxing's protection order, and the words on it were Tomb of the 3 Kings. So that's how it is. He sighed. Perhaps not many people could understand the named Tomb of the 3 Kings. But if there was another thing related to it, even if it wasn't well known, it was definitely popular. That was the legendary divine sword Ganjiang Moi. Legend had it that Ganjiang Moi forged the sword for King Chu, and it took 3 years to complete. Ganjiang knew that it wouldn't bode well for him to present the sword, so he left the male sword behind and only brought the female sword to meet King Chu. As expected, he was cut down by King Chu. Moi gave birth to their child, Mei Jianqi. When he grew up, he told him about his father. Mei Jianqi took out the male sword and wanted to avenge his father, but King Chu accidentally found out about it. King Chu used a lot of money to capture Mei Jianqi, and the latter could only hide deep in the mountains. Later, Mei Jianqi met a swordsman who heard his story and decided to avenge Mei Jianqi. But to do so, he needed Mei Jianqi's head and the male sword, Ganjiang. Mei Jianqi did not hesitate to cut his own throat with the sword, but his corpse immediately stiffened and stood upright. Only when the swordsman promised that he could avenge him did Mei Jianqi's corpse fall down as if it was at ease. The swordsman brought Mei Jianqi's head and the male sword, Ganjiang, to meet King Chu. King Chu was very happy, and according to the swordsman's instructions, he set up a bronze cauldron and wanted to boil Mei Jianqi's head. But even after 3 days and 3 nights, there was still no change. So the swordsman said that King Chu needed to put his face on the bronze cauldron to boil Mei Jianqi's head. King Chu did not doubt him and put his head on the cauldron. The swordsman took the opportunity to cut off King Chu's head with his sword, causing it to fall into the bronze cauldron. King Chu's head and Mei Jianqi's head were biting each other in the cauldron, unable to determine the winner. So the swordsman cut off his own head and threw it into the cauldron, attacking King Chu together with Mei Jianqi. By the time the officials of Chu arrived, the 3 heads had all rotted into a lump, unable to be distinguished. So they could only bury the 3 heads together, calling it the Tomb of the 3 Kings. Su Shenxing saw that the stone tablet seemed to have been unearthed not long ago, and there was no news about it recently. He vaguely guessed that Chuketsu's father was secretly buying and selling stolen artifacts obtained from tomb robbing, and in the end, attracted the vengeful spirit that lingered for thousands of years. That was why his entire family was implicated and died in a car accident. As for what the meat paste was, Su Shenxing was not too interested to know. At worst, he would deliberately trigger the alarm later, and let the guards who woke up collect the corpse and investigate its identity. Just as Su Shenxing was about to leave the basement, he suddenly patted his head and whispered, "That's not right." Chapter 259. What are you looking at? After Song Yu finished washing the dishes, she wiped her hands on her apron and walked out of the kitchen. Although Su Shenxing's ghost had returned to Sakura apartment one after another after playing enough and could help with the housework, there were ordinary people in Sakura apartment. Although ordinary people couldn't see ghosts, it was better to be careful not to make too many supernatural phenomena. Secondly, Song Yu felt that doing the housework herself would make her feel more at home. After walking out of the kitchen, she immediately saw Chuketsu, who was nestled on the sofa and looking at his phone in a daze. Song Yu had a good impression of this little girl who had been quiet all the time, so she couldn't help but talk to her. Because of her sudden greeting, Yi Chuyue trembled for a moment. Then she raised her head and looked at Song Yu in a daze. I'm looking at a photo," she replied in a low voice. At this time, Song Yu had also seen the picture on the screen of the girl's phone. It was a family photo of the little girl, but although it was a family photo, it was actually just a photo taken casually with the phone. A middle-aged man was hugging a young woman, and the woman was holding a British shorthair in her arms, and Chuketsu was between the two. Judging from her actions in the photo, she should be taking a selfie with her phone. "Are those your parents?" Song Yu naturally also noticed the girl's timidity, so she didn't talk to her too aggressively, which would easily cause her to be disgusted. Instead, she tried to gently guide the other party and let the other party take the initiative to bring up a topic. The girl nodded first, then lowered her head with some disappointment. "In my phone, there are 3 photos of all 3 of them, only this one. In the girl's villa, there should be other photos of her parents. But when Su Shenxing brought the girl back to Sakura apartment, except for some clothes, they almost didn't bring anything, so it was naturally impossible for there to be such photos. I'm sorry about your parents, but I think people should always look forward." Song Yu, who knew what happened from Su Shenxing, tried to comfort her. "Your parents' souls in heaven wouldn't want to see you immersed in sadness all the time, right?" However, maybe this kind of comfort was too versatile, or maybe Chuketsu had long been tired of this kind of comfort, but judging from the girl's expression, it obviously didn't have much effect. Song Yu also noticed this, so she couldn't continue to let the girl be sad, so she simply tried to change the topic. "Is the cat in your mother's arms? It's so cute." This sentence was not a compliment, but Song Yu's heart felt. The cat in the photo had soft gray fur, and its lazy expression matched its bright yellow eyes very well. It looked very beautiful, and with the fluffy ears on both sides of its head and the fluffy feeling brought about by its young age, it exuded a sense of cuteness. It was no wonder that Song Yu was attracted to it. "Yes, it's called Blue." Ichiyue nodded. "That's quite appropriate." Although she didn't have a cat, Song Yu actually quite liked cats. Naturally, she knew that people in Jiangjin would abbreviate British short-hair cats as blue cats to distinguish them from American short-hair cats. Why didn't you bring it to Sakura apartment? Song Yu asked curiously. Well, even though Sakura's apartment was filled with all kinds of strange creatures and events, it was indeed the right choice not to bring the cat along. But usually, under such circumstances, the cat would be brought along. Blue has already passed away. The girl's expression became sad again. Sorry. Song Yu heard and immediately apologized, but the little girl shook her head, indicating that it didn't matter. So Song Yu asked again, did it also die in that car accident? No, Blue died because it was sick, the girl replied softly with a nasal voice. The girl replied softly. Her voice was nasal and it seemed like she was about to cry. My father and I buried it under the hibiscus tree in the courtyard. Something was wrong. Su Shinxing scratched his face and began to follow the clues that flashed through his mind. First of all, he didn't know what happened to the meat paste, but he was sure that it died outside the room where Chiketsu's father hid the antiques and treasures. Moreover, it was the tragic type that turned into meat paste without even touching the door. Thinking about it carefully, even Su Shinxing almost fell for it. That strange space was really too strange. Although a treasure like the Tomb of the Three Kings would definitely be very famous once it was discovered. But fame and ability weren't necessarily the same. Could the Tomb of the Three Kings have the ability to create that strange world? Furthermore, could the Tomb of the Three Kings have killed Chiketsu's parents? To be honest, Su Shinxing felt that the thing didn't seem to be as powerful as it seemed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been forced to work overtime here. In addition, the meat paste and the attack on Su Shinxing were a bit difficult to explain. After all, there were security guards in the villa, and the security guards often patrolled the villa. Su Shinxing was sure that many of the security guards patrolled the route he just took. But the others weren't attacked by the strange statue like he was. It wasn't that Su Shinxing looked down on the security guards here, but he always felt that if he let the statue attack, at least not many of the security guards would be able to escape. But until now, there had never been any news of the security guards going missing. This probably meant that the act of pulling people into a strange space and killing them wasn't done unconsciously, but had some kind of trigger mechanism. Only people who were defined as intruders would be attacked. The Tomb of the Three Kings didn't have this kind of ability. To be able to do this, it wasn't something that had more literary meaning than practical significance like the Tomb of the Three Kings. It had to be at least a complicated formation. Then the question was, could a formation that could automatically identify intruders and react to them be made by coincidence? Unfortunately, Su Shinxing didn't believe this. In other words, Chiketsu's father, Su Shinxing's stepfather, was probably not an ordinary person. Of course, in addition to that, there were some other doubts, but it was better to confirm the most important point first. Even if Su Shinxing was an idiot in magic, he had seen a lot of storms and waves. As long as it wasn't too obscure, he could basically see the reason why it was. Chapter 260. Sure enough, it's not normal. After returning to the villa's underground warehouse where the antiques were hidden, Su Shinxing carefully looked at the layout inside and muttered softly. This time, the phenomenon of dragging people into a different space was not activated. He didn't know if that thing only worked on one person once, or if it was because the black screen knew that this thing was useless to Su Shinxing, so it didn't activate. In short, after carefully observing the layout of the warehouse, Su Shinxing didn't find any traces of magic or formation complex enough to be activated in special circumstances. However, the abnormality of the warehouse itself was also exposed under Su Shinxing's careful observation. First of all, there was a logical abnormality. There were a lot of antiques in this warehouse. Even Su Shinxing, who didn't know much about antiques, could roughly tell that many of the things in there were expensive. At least he probably couldn't afford to buy them in his lifetime if he only worked as a snack vendor. But if there were only these things, there were a lot of strange things in some of the antiques in the underground warehouse. For example, there was a bunch of green foxtail in an antique flower screen, 3 steamed buns in a blue and white porcelain plate, and plain water in a green jade wine bottle. In addition, because of the magic power sealed in his body that was enough to pinch the earth like a ball of mud, Su Shinxing was very slow to sense ordinary energy. It wasn't that he couldn't sense ordinary energy, but that for him the amount of electricity in a battery and the amount of energy produced by a nuclear bomb explosion were almost the same level. If he didn't carefully feel it, there was no way to distinguish between the two. Only after careful observation and perception could he determine the amount of a certain energy through some of the surrounding reference objects. In the underground warehouse, in addition to the electric power carried by the wires buried in the wall, there was another kind of special energy flowing. Su Shenxing had never seen this kind of energy on Earth. It was neither the Jinqi in Qin Xingyan's body, nor the demon power carried by monsters, nor the divine power of gods. If he had to describe it, it was somewhat similar to the curse power or spiritual power used by the Yin-Yang master Henokiyuan Yuan in Japan. However, compared to Henokiyuan Yuan's curse power, this kind of power flowing in the air of the warehouse was thicker and colder and also a little strange. After carefully experiencing it, Su Shenxing even had the illusion that he smelled blood. This strange power weaved a big net, connecting most of the antiques in the underground warehouse, including the conspicuous tomb of the Three Kings. Su Shenxing felt that if the black screen was willing, any antique connected with this kind of power could produce an illusion similar to the tomb of the Three Kings in a different space. In fact, it was true. What Su Shenxing didn't know was that if it wasn't him but an ordinary person, even if they could escape the pursuit of the sheep-head monster statue, in the illusion of the tomb of the Three Kings, they would have been eroded by the thousand-year-old resentment. If it was light, they would have gone crazy, and if it was serious, their brain would have died. Su Shenxing was immune to all kinds of illusions, and his spiritual power was even more powerful. Even if he didn't wave his hand to shatter the space in the illusion at that time, in the end, the illusion would have collapsed due to the difference in spiritual power between them, revealing the original appearance of the underground warehouse. After strolling around the underground warehouse for a while, Su Shenxing took out his phone and found that there was actually a signal here, so he called Qin Xingyan and described what he saw to the girl, trying to see if he could get some information from her. Originally, he didn't have much hope. After all, the energy flowing in this space was too strange, and it didn't seem like the power system of cultivators. Although Xingyan A Dream knew a lot about cultivation, her knowledge of other supernatural aspects couldn't even compare to Chihaya Fukuyama, who was just an ordinary person a month ago, in fact a man-god now. In the end, he didn't expect that Qin Xingyan really did know some of these things. The green foxtail is probably a symbol of the Taoist cloud. The cloud was originally used to drive away mosquitoes and the like, but now it can be extended to drive away all kinds of unnecessary things. If I'm not wrong, the 3 steamed buns should be filled with pork, beef and mutton. These 3 are the so-called 3 animals in the past, and the steamed buns themselves also have an illusion. Is it the one about Zhuge Liang? Su Shenxing had also heard of this rumor, so he asked casually. Although some places now referred to steamed buns without fillings, dating back to an even older era, steamed buns were actually filled with fillings. According to legend, when Zhuge Liang pacified the southern barbarians, he had to cross a big river, but the river was extremely turbulent, and there was no way to build a bridge and ferry boats. The locals said that only by sacrificing human heads to the river god, the river would calm down. Zhuge Liang couldn't bear to kill civilians in order to cross the river, so he took their heads to sacrifice to the river god. Therefore he killed sheep and pigs, wrapped the meat in dough, called them steamed buns, and threw them into the river to replace the human heads. As a result, the river calmed down, and the steamed buns became a popular Chinese snack that had been passed down until now. That's right, the steamed buns themselves originated from rituals used for sacrifice, so they can be used as a tribute. When the meat contained in the steamed buns are pigs, cows and sheep, the effect of the sacrifice will be several times better, and many rituals can be used. It's the cheapest and most useful ritual and formation core of this era, without exception. How should he put it, the ritual items of this era were unexpectedly popularized. I'm not too sure about the last green jade wine bottle, but if I'm not wrong, the water in it is probably not plain water but rainwater. This kind of water was also mentioned in Journey to the West. It belongs to the category of rootless water, and in the ancient times of the Celestial Empire, it was considered the cleanest water. Although modern technology has broken this saying in many cases, the main thing that constitutes a ritual or formation is not the effect of the object itself, but the meaning it contains. The green foxtail grass dispels interference, the 3 animals steamed buns as the core, and the rootless water drives spiritual energy. As long as they are placed properly, these 3 can form a very common formation. With that, Qin Xingyan explained the relevant situation of the formation to Su Shenxing in detail. After she finished speaking, The expression on Su Shenxing's face changed into a look of understanding. Thanks, if everything goes well, maybe after this matter is solved, I can still make it home in time for dinner. After hanging up the phone, Su Shenxing left the warehouse and walked slowly toward the villa's hall. Chapter 261. According to Qin Xingyan, the formation set up in the warehouse was probably some kind of energy channel to connect the antiques. Due to the fact that the materials used to cast it and the conditions for casting it were very popular, this kind of formation was widely spread. There was no way to determine who set up the formation based on this fact alone. However, Su Shenxing could at least confirm one thing. Since the formation in the warehouse that was related to the alternate dimension did not have the ability to self-regulate, there must be a shady figure controlling everything in this villa. After understanding this point, the next step was much simpler. He just had to find out who the shady figure was and punch it out of the window. Although, mainly due to the author's slow update speed, the situation seemed to be a mess at first glance and he did not know where to start. Su Shenxing received a text message from Xiao Jingyi about the preliminary investigation of the case. After thinking about it carefully, he realized that all of this was not that complicated. After a little investigation, many people would know that Chiketsu's father was involved in the underground antique trade. Then, if he followed this line of investigation, he would know that the car accident that Mr. and Mrs. Chow encountered was not a coincidence. There were certain traces of human intervention. Although the driver who caused the accident did not admit to it, Xiao Jingyi still managed to find some clues through the side investigation. If it was an ordinary person's train of thought, after investigating this point, they would more or less conclude that Mr. and Mrs. Chow had connections with criminals because of the underground antique trade. Then for some reason the criminals wanted to eliminate the insiders, so Mr. and Mrs. Chow were killed. Even Xiao Jingyi's text message came to this conclusion. However, after considering the situation in the warehouse, Su Shenxing did not agree with this conjecture. The formation in the warehouse was obviously not set up by an outsider. It was most likely set up by Chiketsu's father himself. To be able to come into contact with real supernatural forces, Chiketsu's father was probably not an ordinary person. However, such a person was killed just because of a car accident. No matter how he thought about it, something felt wrong. What made Su Shenxing even more suspicious was why there was only one coffin at the funeral when Mr. and Mrs. E had already passed away. At first, Su Shenxing thought that it was just because his relatives were stingy, but now that he thought about it carefully, he was afraid that there was some secret behind it. It was because of this that he returned to the hall and stared at the coffin that had yet to be buried. I've heard of an illusion that doesn't take effect by interfering with the five senses of others. Instead, it directly interferes with the person's judgment. Everyone who is affected by it will subconsciously think that the situation is normal no matter what they see. Although it wasn't night yet, the heavy opaque curtains were drawn over the windows, so the hall gave off a gloomy and terrifying feeling, not to mention the coffin placed in the middle of the hall. For example, they knew that they were attending two people's funerals, but there was only one corpse. In the end, they only used one coffin to consecrate it, but they didn't feel anything strange about it at all. As he spoke, Su Shenxing walked to the coffin and reached out to lift the coffin lid that was nailed to the ground. Other than that, no one else could easily know the patrol route of the security guards and make preparations to hide in advance except for the original owner of the castle, right? A rotten smell spread from the coffin and instantly filled the hall, but Su Shenxing didn't seem to be affected. He looked at the coffin with a sneer. Sure enough, there was only one highly decomposed corpse inside. Judging from the sexual characteristics, it should be the corpse of a woman. Do you still want to hide now? My stepfather Chao Zhongxing. As soon as Su Shenxing's voice fell, a burst of applause came from the back of the hall. I didn't expect that there would be someone who found out that I'm not dead. Your mother will be happy to know. Although I didn't intend to acknowledge that woman as my mother, you still have the nerve to say that after killing her. I've never seen such a shameless person. Su Shenxing turned his head and stared in the direction of the voice. Then the other party gradually appeared in his field of vision. The man was tall and skinny, wearing a very retro-style suit. His skin, which was exposed outside the suit, looked incomparably pale. When he walked, he was a little wobbly. It was unknown whether he was born with it or if it was caused by his sloppiness. The middle-aged handsome face that didn't lose to the little fresh meats had a somewhat hearty smile, which made people involuntarily have a good impression of him. With such a good appearance, it was no wonder that he could easily marry Su Shenxing's father. But now Su Shenxing frowned and looked at the other party for a moment, and then showed some surprise and disgust. "You guy, are you not even human?" Originally Su Shenxing thought that Chao Zhongjing, who was behind the scenes, was just faking his death and wanted to secretly control everything. But he didn't expect that the other party might have really died once, but now he returned to the world in a forbidden state. Because there are too many restrictions on humans, for the sake of eternal life and power that surpasses humans, I can only do this. The other party didn't care at all about Su Shenxing's disgust and said frankly, "Before we fight, I still have some questions to ask you." Su Shenxing suppressed the urge to punch the other party into pieces and asked coldly, "What are you running away from? For this, you didn't hesitate to fake your death, sacrificed that woman and almost killed Chiketsu for this?" "I don't have the obligation to tell you, young man." Chao Zhongjing seemed to have been poked in his sore spot by Su Shenxing. The leisurely expression on his face disappeared and was replaced by a gloomy and cold expression. "Then how did you become like this?" After being rejected by the other party, Su Shenxing continued to ask, "Your current appearance should be an existence between a vampire and a lich, right?" That's right, the current Chao Zhongjing had become an undead creature that was extremely rare on Earth, with almost eternal life and great power. Vampires aside, in this era, ordinary people couldn't be reincarnated into a lich, which required a lot of power, magic power, spiritual power, and so on. In the age of chaos, modern Earth generally couldn't provide so much. "That's because I have a special source of magic power." I've talked too much with you, it's about time to send you on your way." The other party casually gave a perfunctory reply, and then a fierce glint appeared in his eyes. "If you found me a little earlier, maybe I wouldn't be a match for you who could escape from the illusion of the Tomb of the Three Kings before my power stabilized. But now it's all too late." Su Shenxing curled his lips and then looked at the time displayed on his phone. "It's a little late. If I want to make it in time for lunch, I have to deal with you in about 3 minutes. Chapter 262. Before Su Shenxing's voice had died away, Chao Zhongjing had already turned his hands over. A black cloud appeared out of thin air and headed toward Su Shenxing's head to cover him. It seemed that he intended to take advantage of the fact that Su Shenxing was not ready to launch a sneak attack to finish off the enemy in one fell swoop. In Chao Zhongjing's opinion, although his wife had never mentioned anything special about the child she had with her ex-husband, after all, he was someone who had broken through the illusion of the Tomb of the Three Kings. It was better to be careful and safe. His move was called the Poison Cloud Technique. It was not a technique native to Huaxiao, but a technique used by the group of wizards close to Europe. As the name implied, it was an attack method that turned a highly toxic poison into a cloud to envelop the enemy. It was not a novel technique, but it was unexpectedly practical. Moreover, according to his own preparations in advance, the poison cloud he used would be different and would not be easily broken by others. After becoming an undead, he had to prepare for a long time before using the poison cloud technique, but at this moment he could easily use it. Although he could only use the decaying poison without preparing a highly toxic poison in advance, it was already enough to make Chao Zhongjing, who was resurrected from the dead and fighting for the first time, feel very refreshed. He deeply felt that his decision to get rid of the shackles of the human body was extremely wise. Although the decaying poison was not a fatal poison, it was still one of the most effective poisons. What was more frightening was that this kind of poison did not need to enter the human body through the nasal cavity or mucous membranes. Even a little bit of it on the skin would cause poisoning. In a short time, it would destroy the human body's cells and rot the blood, causing people to begin to rot at a speed visible to the naked eye while they were still alive. It was extremely vicious. The speed of the poison cloud technique was also extremely fast. It was impossible for ordinary people to react in a short time. Even if they could react in time, as long as the whole room was covered with the poison cloud, he could already be regarded as invincible. Just as he was so convinced, a fist broke through the poison cloud and directly punched the upper half of his chest into nothingness. "You're so disgusting, releasing such a smelly thing without saying anything." Su Shenxing, who was unscathed, pulled out his fist. Looking at Chao Zhongjing, whose wounds were healing at a high speed, It was better to say that he was recovering as if time had flowed backward, he shouted unhappily. Chao Zhongjing, who had half of his chest and head blown off, clearly didn't understand what had just happened. He looked at Su Shenxing in confusion. What are you looking at? Therefore, Su Shenxing punched Chao Zhongjing's upper body again. He didn't even give Chao Zhongjing the chance to reply, "What's wrong with looking at you?" This time, after Chao Zhongjing was resurrected, he finally reacted and distanced himself from Su Shenxing in horror. However, this was of no use. Whether it was dodging or defending, even if there was a considerable distance between them, Su Shenxing only needed to wave his fist, and Chao Zhongjing still could not escape the fate of being beaten to a pulp. It's useless. No matter how many times you kill me, I will always be able to revive. So he simply gave up dodging. After resurrecting again, he shouted at Su Shenxing, "I admit that you are very powerful and I can't even fight back, but it's useless. I will resurrect again and again, and you will be killed by me after exhausting all your strength." However, he didn't realize that his spirit had begun to become a little abnormal. As a former creature, the pain and despair brought by death destroyed his spirit again and again, causing his self-proclaimed indestructible spirit to gradually collapse. Without the previous shell of wisdom, only hysterical madness was left. Su Shenxing didn't stop because of his words. He continued to give him the gift of death again and again with an expressionless face. It wasn't that Chao Zhongjing didn't think of using a method of mutual destruction to cause harm to Su Shenxing, but the gap between the two was so huge that he didn't even have the chance to do so. Are you still not going to say it? The two questions I asked earlier. After a long while, Su Shenxing asked, are you tired and want to stall for time? At this time, Chao Zhongjing no longer had the appearance of having the pearl of wisdom from before. He looked as miserable as a stray dog. But it's okay, I have personally experienced the beauty of an immortal body. There's no harm in telling you a bit of my life story. Little Zhongjing, do you know why I gave you this name? When Chao Zhongjing was very young, his grandfather once said to him, "Being neutral and peaceful is the foundation of being a person. If you are too strong, it is easy to break, and if you are too soft, it is easy to flatter. I hope that you can adjust your mind and be a peaceful and neutral person." At that time, Chao Zhongjing didn't understand the meaning of his grandfather's words. He was different from his useless brother. He was a proud son of heaven since he was young. He had excellent grades and was good at sports. After graduation, everything went smoothly and he founded Chao's company. However, maintaining a company was much more difficult than he imagined. In the business world where the strong preyed on the weak, there was no one left who was weak. It was already Chao Zhongjing's limit to start from scratch with his drive. After 2 years in the business world of mutual deception, his ambitions in his early years were ground away by setbacks, and Chao's enterprise began to go downhill. There was even one time when he went abroad to discuss with a partner, he encountered a major setback. The squeezed products couldn't be sold, causing the capital chain to break. Even the entire company was in a precarious situation because of this. It was also at this time that the frustrated Chao Zhongjing met a few strange people. They claimed to be lower-level members of the Illumination Society. They said that they could provide help to Chao Zhongjing and help his company get through this crisis. However, Chao Zhongjing had to become a lower-level member, and after that, Chao's company had to pay a considerable amount of money to the Illumination Society as a membership fee. At that time, Chao Zhongjing, who had nowhere else to go, could only bite the bullet and agree to them. It was also at that time that he came into contact with the supernatural power of witchcraft. That kind of supernatural power and the power that was above all living things made him completely lose his peaceful and neutral heart. After understanding how powerful the other party was, Chao Zhongjing also extinguished any thoughts of resistance. He only secretly collected knowledge about witchcraft in the form of underground antique trading, intending to find a way to escape. After going through ups and downs in the business world for so long, he also understood that many times, if he casually ventured into a field that he shouldn't be in contact with, he would definitely end up in a tragic state. Moreover, although Chao's company had succeeded in prolonging its life the last time, the increasing membership fee was like a parasite, constantly absorbing the company's liquidity and vitality. If this continued, Chao's company would soon be on the verge of bankruptcy again. Moreover, this time the Illumination Society, who had secretly planted many lower-level members in the company, would definitely chew the entire company into pieces and swallow it, instead of sponsoring him to make a comeback like before. At first, I thought that I'd need to lay low for a longer time before I could get that opportunity. After all, the necromancy transformation method that I've found and perfected requires a stable and powerful source of energy. Chao Zhongjing looked at Su Shenxing, who was still expressionless after listening to most of the story, and said, "But I didn't expect the opportunity to come so soon." He thought that as long as he was careful and did not let Su Shenxing catch him off guard like just now, he should be able to dodge his opponent's fist. Just as he was about to make the first move to gain the upper hand, Su Shenxing suddenly looked at him, which made him feel a chill in his heart, and he reflexively took a few steps back. "Is that all?" Su Shenxing asked. "What do you mean?" Chao Zhongjing was stunned. "Oh, then it looks like you've finished talking." Su Shenxing nodded in understanding. "I'm also a person who pays attention to reciprocity. Then I'll also tell you a little bit of good news." As he said this, Su Shenxing took a step forward. Chao Zhongjing subconsciously took a few steps back, directly pressing his back against the wall, his whole body pressed against it. Immediately he became angry out of humiliation. He had an immortal body. What was there to be afraid of? Everything has a cause and effect. The so-called immortal body naturally cannot escape this category. Su Shenxing completely ignored his expression, but slowly raised his fist and said, "If you obtain an immortal body because of medicine, then destroy the effect of that medicine. If you obtain an immortal body because of a treasure, then destroy that treasure together with it. If you obtain an immortal body from birth, then wipe out the fact that this thing was born. My fist is a fist that can shatter karma." His tone was not boasting, nor was there any threat in his tone. He was simply stating a fact. But it was precisely this that made Chao Zhongjing feel even more terrified. For something like an immortal body, the number of people who have died under my fist and sword is almost enough to form a company. "What exactly are you Chao Zhongjing hysterically roared. "A normal person." As he said this, Su Shenxing swung his fist towards the other party. As long as this punch landed, Chao Zhongjing would probably disappear along with the small cat's corpse that was his soul box. But the moment he touched the other party, Chao Zhongjing's body turned into snow-white ashes and scattered all over the ground. It was not destroyed by Su Shenxing's fist, but at that moment Chao Zhongjing's soul was pulled out of this body and transferred to another body that he had prepared beforehand. "He's pretty smart." Su Shenxing raised his eyebrows. But this was of no use. As soon as he came in, the entire villa was already enveloped in the protection of the sacred land. And under Su Shenxing's instructions, the protection of the sacred land was gradually shrinking. Chao Zhongjing could no longer escape. "Are you kidding me? How could there be such a monster in this world?" Chao Zhongjing, who broke through the wall of a sculpture, tried to adapt to his new body while running to the courtyard. There was no chance of winning against the other party, so he could only think of a way to escape. But as an existence similar to a lich, he could not leave his soul box too far away. Before escaping, he had to dig out the small cat's corpse that was the soul box. I remember that it was buried here. The place where the small cat's corpse was buried was under the hibiscus tree in the courtyard. Chao Zhongjing's hands desperately dug up the wet soil, wanting to dig out the small cat's corpse, but he unexpectedly dug up something else. It was a metal cookie box covered in mud and looked quite old. Unfortunately, the cookie factory of this brand had closed down a few years ago. Chao Zhongjing recognized this box. It was a time capsule that he buried when he was young. Once upon a time, this villa did not exist and there was a small building here. That was the house of Chao Zhongjing's grandfather. When he was young, Chao Zhongjing did not live with his parents who were busy making money, but lived with his grandfather. Even the name was given by his grandfather. When he was about 10 years old, his grandfather asked him and his brother Chao Gu to write down their future wishes and then bury them under the tree. They would dig it out when they grew up. But he did not expect to dig it out at this time. Now was not the time to look at it. The most important thing was to find the soul box quickly and then leave this place. Although he knew in his heart, Chao Zhongjing unconsciously twisted open the lid of the cookie box and saw the yellowed paper inside. "To me after I grew up, did you become a useful adult? Not the kind of adult who can make a lot of money, or rather, it would be no different from my parents who abandoned me. but an adult who is useful to others, who can help others, who is relied on by others, who is respected by others. I think that kind of person can be considered as powerful. After I grew up, could you smile every day? I like smiles, whether it is others or my own, I like them all. Grandpa said that a smile is a bridge that transcends language and can allow people to communicate with each other. To be honest, I don't know much about this, but I think that if you can smile every day, you must be very happy, just like me now. After I grew up, did you find someone who can accompany you for the rest of your life? Well, actually, this is just to make up the word count because Grandpa said that I must write at least 500 words. Yesterday I just happened to see a TV show like this, so I wrote it down. Wife. To be able to be together forever, to understand each other, to not be separated no matter what, to protect her even at the cost of his life. That should be how people like that should be called, right? Did I find someone like that in the future? If only I could find someone like that. Also, if I have children, I hope to have a daughter because that would be cuter, right? In the end, after I grew up, did you become an indomitable, upright man? Just like Grandpa, you will not be defeated by difficulties no matter what, you will be able to stand straight and accept the blows of fate. You will not give in, you will not give up, you will bravely move forward for your dreams and future. That is my dream. Yes. If it is realized, don't be shy, applaud yourself. If it is not, don't give up, I am cheering for you now. Chao Zhongjing, written on 19XX month XX day. Chao Zhongjing felt that his hands were a little stiff. There was also a piece of the same yellowed paper in the biscuit box. He shakily picked up the paper and found that it was a few words written by his late grandpa. Be peaceful and upright, don't forget your original intention. He trembled even more. Although there was no physiological activity, he felt that his chest was stuffy and uncomfortable. Not running anymore? The monster-like young man had slowly walked behind him without him knowing. But Chao Zhongjing had no intention of running away. I once had everything. At this moment he wanted to cry, but the tear ducts of this body had already stopped working. He could only murmur with a trembling voice, but I destroyed them all with my own hands. In this world, once you do something, you can't go back. Su Xinxing was silent for a moment and then slowly said, Does a monster like you also have regrets? Chao Zhongjing asked. Too many to count. Su Xinxing replied with a wry smile. So that's how it is, power can't give you everything. So, I've been wrong all this time and I've been so wrong. When I'm staring at one thing, I'll ignore everything around me. Chao Zhongjing lay on the ground, closed his eyes and had a relieved expression on his face. The soul box is under the hibiscus tree, you can do it. This time Su Xinxing didn't hesitate and raised his right hand. After dealing with the body, Su Xinxing looked at the gem-like thing in his hand. It was dug out from the place where the soul box was buried. Although it looked strangely familiar, Su Xinxing couldn't remember where he had seen this thing before. Forget it, since you're staying here, I'll use this thing to make a necklace for Chuketsu in 2 days. Su Xinxing shrugged and looked at the shadow floating beside him. I think she'll be happy to return to her side as a guardian spirit. Although that girl is just a normal human, she can't see you. Meow, the shadow let out a small meow. It's finally over, let's go home and eat. Su Xinxing's face showed a big smile and stretched. It hasn't been long, but I feel like I've been hungry for a week. Meow. Chapter 264. In the quiet dimensional sea, a spaceship-like dimensional ship was suspended in it. From the paint of the hull, it could be vaguely seen that this was also a dimensional ship from the Space Administration, but compared to the one from Lux, it was larger and more luxurious. In addition, the huge badge located on the back deck of the bridge and the numbered 7 on the badge that was commonly used in tens of thousands of universes were even more eye-catching. If it was a race that could enter and exit the multidimensional universe, they could basically understand the meaning of this badge. There were millions of deacons in the Space Administration, but the most outstanding 10 of them would be granted the title of a seat and have the right to represent the Space Administration. They would be respectfully called the executors of the Space Administration. The dimensional ship in front of them was the ship of the 7th executor, the Violet, free translation. It was just that although at first glance, one would subconsciously marvel at the magnificence of this dimensional ship, upon closer inspection, one would find that it was not in good condition. Scars could be seen everywhere, almost covering the entire dimensional ship. There were countless exposed circuit breaks. If it wasn't in the dimensional sea where normal matter couldn't exist, there would probably be black smoke and other things coming out. Code UK004 signal has been lost. Your Excellency Ing, we can't continue to track it. In the bridge, a slightly rigid mechanical voice sounded. It escaped again. The girl sitting on the captain's chair frowned, and her heroic temperament could not hide the strong tiredness on her face. But even so, there was no intention of retreating because of the difficulties in her eyes. Based on the current situation, I suggest that you return to the Space Administration first, perform maintenance on the ship, and upload the information of UK004 to the headquarters terminal. If it weren't for the failure of the Violet's upload circuit, the girl muttered and then did not hesitate to reject the shipboard AI's proposal. We don't have time to return. I have chased that guy for 1,300 standard years. No one knows its harm better than I do. Even if it is left alone for a short period of time, it will evolve into a superdimensional disaster that even the Space Administration is helpless against. But Your Excellency, we have lost the signal of UK004, and there is no way to continue tracking it at present. According to the past situation, it is most likely hiding in a nearby world. No, in the worst case, that guy may have evolved the ability to block the detection of the Space Administration. The girl bit her nails and thought for a moment, then looked up and asked, Violet, which world is the closest to us in terms of information volume now? It's an unconfirmed world. Please wait a moment. The detection circuit just detected some information about this world. It seems that a deacon has been to this world before. The planet with the largest amount of information in this world has also been marked. Oh? I'm really lucky. When I return to the Space Administration in the future, I'll have to thank that administrator properly. In short, UK004 is also a creature that is very sensitive to information. He will definitely appear on the planet with the most information in the world. After a while, the somewhat rigid voice continued to speak. That is a planet Earth, Earth. Do you need me to repeat the detection of its information volume? Since the other party has marked it as undetectable, it means that the information volume is likely to exceed the detection limit of the general dimensional ship's mainframe. You should stop all the secondary programs, empty the calculation volume and then perform the detection. The girl thought for a while, then said, Understood. Detection in progress. After a while, black smoke began to rise from the control panel of the bridge, and electric sparks crackled from time to time. What's going on? The girl asked in surprise, as it was the first time she had seen such a situation. The detection value has exceeded the upper limit. Warning, the detection value has exceeded the upper limit. The girl opened her mouth wide in surprise. As the seventh executor, the performance of her dimensional ship's mainframe computer was heaven and earth compared with that of the general deacon. It was precisely because of this that she could carry and use the detection of thousands of worlds at a time. But now she couldn't even detect a planet in an ordinary world? Just how much information did that planet contain? Could it be some planet with high-energy radiation, and the intelligent creatures on it have developed a supernatural civilization? But that's not right. Even if it's a level 3 civilization in a high-energy world, the information volume shouldn't be so large. Although she was full of doubts, the girl did not continue to sit still. Instead, she forcibly interrupted the mainframe computer's suicidal behavior through manual safety. Violet, you wait in the upper airspace. I'll go to that world to take a look. According to UK004's risk assessment, I don't recommend you to do this kind of illegal operation. It's because it's dangerous that I have to go. How many civilizations do you think I've seen that guy destroy in the past 1,300 years? The girl sighed. This is an order. Violet, send me to that Earth. Since it's your will, I will obey. I think I stepped on some strange bug. Su Xinxing lifted his foot with a face of disgust. He looked at the pool of green mucus under his shoe and the strange creature that looked like a mutated lobster. He couldn't help but have a headache. I already have a lot of things to worry about today. Now I have to go home and wash my shoes that were dirted by this disgusting thing. Spare me. After solving the problem with Chiketsu's family, Su Xinxing had a peaceful life, but this peaceful life didn't last long. A week later, it would be Jiangjin University's anniversary celebration. It was said that it was an event similar to Fuso Animation High School's festival. To be honest, because last year's anniversary celebration, Su Xinxing took Emily to play Star Wars in Centaurus, so he wasn't too sure what it was like. But this year his classmates didn't seem to want to let him go. He didn't know when they discussed it, but when they voted for the anniversary celebration, they unanimously voted for maid coffee. Actually, this wasn't a big deal. The problem was that Su Xinxing chose a major that had too many males and too few females. There were only 3 females in his class. Either you dress as a woman yourself, or you let your younger sisters be your maid. Choose one. When the 4-eyed class monitor patted him on the shoulder and said that earnestly, Su Xinxing almost couldn't help but stuff his glasses into the other party's skull. Su Xinxing could more or less guess the cause of this matter. After all, there were too many monks and too little gruel in their department. In the end, not only did Su Xinxing have a beautiful sister, Emily, he also had an unclear relationship with Song Yu. Last semester, the mysterious witch Asahi Sakura Kanji also came to school to find him. Su Xinxing guessed that if these guys had the chance, they would probably bury him in a small mound in the back of the mountain. Not long ago, Chiketsu came to school to find him because he didn't bring his apartment keys. Su Xinxing could only honestly say, "This is my other sister." Then the next day Chihaya Fukuyama was the one who didn't bring his keys. Su Xinxing could only use "this is my cousin" to get away with it. Originally he thought that there was no one else in his apartment so he could be at ease. But on the 3rd day the one who came to find him was a lowly. Su Xinxing felt that it was already amazing that the group of male compatriots who were crying bloody tears and complaining about the unfairness of fate could endure until now and not treat him as an Aruba. Anyway, he sighed again. Because of the psychological trauma in his past, he couldn't dress as a female. Then what he had to do was very clear: how should I persuade them to come to school to be maids? Chapter 265. Su Xinxing dragged his tired, mainly psychological, body back to Sakura apartment. For the sake of his own mental health, Su Xinxing decided to try his best to persuade the residents in the apartment to wear maid outfits and join his class's maid cafe. The first one to bear the brunt was naturally Emily, who in a sense was of the same mind as him. Emily maid outfits? Cinnamon sausages, 5 servings. Deal. Su Xinxing gave Emily a thumbs up. Very good, opening the door for one person. That's why I like foodies the most. Su Xinxing said silently in his mind. What are you guys doing there? Chihaya Fukuyama, who watched the whole process from the side, didn't know what to say. Chihaya-sama, would you like more tea? Asahi Sakura Kanji, who was holding a teapot, walked over from the kitchen. Su Xinxing looked around and found that other than Emily, there were only 2 people in the living room who were drinking tea. It seemed like a good opportunity to persuade him. Su Xinxing cleared his throat and asked Chihaya Fukuyama. Excuse me. Do you have anyone who would like to wear a maid's uniform? No, get out. He was mercilessly rejected. As a result, Su Xinxing's entire body fell forward in defeat in front of Jasmine. The little girl was still expressionless or calm. She gently stroked the back of Su Xinxing's head and said softly, like she was comforting a child, "Mr. Landlord, don't be discouraged." Although Su Xinxing already knew that Chihaya Fukuyama was definitely an impenetrable fortress, he didn't expect it to be this strong. She didn't even listen to reason and rejected him without hesitation. As for Asahi Sakura Kanji, although she had a rotten smell that even Su Xinxing had to avoid, her personality was still weak. As long as he could persuade Chihaya Fukuyama, Asahi Sakura Kanji wouldn't be able to escape. "Mr. Landlord, your expression is the same as the villain." While Su Xinxing was thinking, Emily ridiculed him as usual. But these words were selectively ignored by Su Xinxing. Chihaya-chan has been in Jiangjin for a while, right? Su Xinxing pretended to talk as if nothing happened. But the rash conversation just now had already caused the other party to build a wall in her heart. She was obviously on guard against Su Xinxing. Chihaya Fukuyama showed an expression that seemed to even have goosebumps. "I'm not familiar with you. Please don't call me Chan." Su Xinxing's perfect businesslike smile seemed to have some cracks, but he didn't shrink back because of this. Instead, he continued to face the difficulties. "Is there anything you want?" As a human, he definitely had his own desires. As long as he had desires, he could naturally use them as a base to attack. Chihaya Fukuyama thought for a moment and then answered. A BMW X Series car and a house in the city center with an area of at least 100 square meters. A car 200,000 to 2 million. A house 700,000 to 2 million. Su Shenxing's net worth 1,000. Su Shenxing was defeated for the second time. You're too realistic. Our hero cried and beat the ground with tears of blood. A man's value lies in how much money he can make. Chihaya Fukuyama, who had been distressed by family expenses and budgets in a sense, was the closest to an ordinary person in the entire Sakura apartments. Shut up, if you do that, the meaning of the existence of the main character will be completely denied. Well, although I don't disagree with Chihaya-sama's values, but if you do that, isn't Mr. Su too pitiful? Asahi Sakurakanji scratched his face, seeming to feel sorry for Su Shenxing's miserable situation. Although I know, Asahi, you have good intentions, don't you realize that what you said is more hurtful? Chihaya Fukuyama sighed and reminded him. Because if he thought about it carefully, Asahi Sakurakanji was simply saying that Su Shenxing was synonymous with poverty. Although it was not wrong to say that, if they were to compete in the word poverty, the only person who could win against Su Shenxing was probably a vampire who had been poor for hundreds of thousands of years. That's not what I meant. After being criticized by Chihaya Fukuyama, Asahi Sakurakanji also felt that his words were inappropriate, and he hurriedly said, Mr. Su, I'm not saying that you're so poor that you don't even have any value. I just think that you don't have much money and you don't play a role in supporting an ordinary family. Ahem, Su Shenxing almost coughed up blood. Is this AF * king comfort or a stab to the heart? Also, I don't have money purely because I'm still in school. Even my living expenses are earned by working. Speaking of which, there are obviously a lot of people living in Sakura apartments, but other than Qin Xingyan, no one pays the rent. Landlord, Emoli grinned, revealing his small canine teeth, and deliberately used a cheerful tone to give Su Shenxing a thumbs up and said, Don't mind. Don't mind. No, I mind a lot. Su Shenxing muttered in his heart. In short, as rent, can't you wear a maid outfit once? He didn't give up and asked Chihaya Fukuyama. Just one day. Just one day. Regardless, you have to at least explain the ins and outs of the matter to me, right? Chizeo Shinshan was also defeated by Su Shenxing's indomitable momentum, which was more like a thick-skinned momentum. She could only ask helplessly. Su Shenxing hesitated for a while, and in the end he could only tell him the humiliating agreement he made with the boys. Chihaya Fukuyama didn't interrupt and listened to Su Shenxing's description. In the end he said with a smirk on his face, now that you mention it, I think it's good for you to wear a girl's outfit. Before Su Shenxing could say anything, Emoli fell off the sofa with a thud. Miss Emoli, what's wrong? Asahi Sakurakanji hurriedly went to help her. It's too scary. Emoli, who was usually expressionless, held her head and shivered. The tragedy that happened in Centaurus seemed to have resurfaced in her mind. However, Chihaya Fukuyama and Asahi Sakurakanji, who didn't experience that disaster, were confused. That's impossible. Su Shenxing's face was serious. I'm not joking. If I do that, the world will be in danger of being destroyed. Wait a minute. The world will be destroyed because of a person wearing a girl's outfit. That's too tragic. In the end, although they didn't understand the reason, they were intimidated by Su Shenxing and Emoli's imposing manner and agreed to the maid outfit request. Su Shenxing's gaze also turned to the other residents of Sakura apartment. Chapter 266. Where's Chiketsu? Su Shenxing asked Chihaya Fukuyama. After gaining the support of the Demon King Fusang deity and her maid, he had become very confident. He looked back and did not see Chiketsu. Perhaps it was because of the sudden loss of a close relative. Chiketsu had been clinging to Su Shenxing ever since he learned of his half-brother's existence. However, Emoli despised Su Shenxing when he said proudly that he did not dote on his sister in vain. Although Su Shenxing had always emphasized that Sakura Apartments was just an ordinary old apartment, the fact was that there was a protection of the Holy Land outside the apartment. The inside of the apartment itself had an incredible atmosphere. In the past, Su Shenxing often brought some supernatural creatures into Sakura Apartments, intending to observe them for a while before deciding whether to let them out or get rid of them. Over time, there were many things in the apartment that ordinary people could not see. To avoid scaring Chiketsu, who was still an ordinary person, Sushinshin had been busy teaching and warning a lot of supernatural creatures during this period. He barely managed to hide it from the little girl. After Chiyoyu calmed down, Sushinshin used his connections physics to transfer Chiyoyu to Jasmine's school. It was a pity that Chiyoyu couldn't be in the same class as Jasmine because her grade was one level lower than Jasmine's. However, it was very close to Sakura's apartment, and with Jasmine there, Chiyoyu could at least take care of her. Well, judging from Jasmine's personality, perhaps Chiyoyu could take care of her instead. Chiketsu seems to have gone shopping with Miss Chin. Asahi Sakura Kanji picked up the small teapot and asked, "Mr. Landlord, do you want more tea?" "Oh, then I'll help myself." Sushinshin watched Asahi Sakura Kanji pour the amber tea into the teacup and asked, "Is there anyone else in the apartment besides you?" "Miss Song is preparing dinner in the kitchen now." "Oh, is that so?" Sushinshin drank the hot tea in one gulp, stuck out his tongue and put the teacup on the coffee table. "Sorry, I have to leave for a while." Mo Lee, who was immersed in the anime, just waved his hand. Chihaya Fukuyama seemed to be regretting that he had agreed to Sushinshin's request so easily. Only Asahi Sakura Kanji nodded at Sushinshin with a warm smile. When he came to the kitchen door, Sushinshin could already hear Song's muttering. "Scrambled eggs with chives, pine nuts and corn." It seemed like she was talking about the dinner recipe. Sushinshin touched his chin. It seemed like tonight's dinner was quite simple, but Songyu's cooking was still worth looking forward to. Sure enough, he let Songyu be in charge of the food in Sakura apartment. Goji yam puree, garlic roasted light tea, mutton sea cucumber soup, pig kidney. Ah, this is a bit too much, right? Forget it, since I've already bought it, I'll just put it in the soup. It seemed like she was talking about the aphrodisiac recipe. Taking back his words, it seemed like she was still worried. Does this girl think I'm an aphrodisiac? Sushinshin knocked on the kitchen door with a head full of black lines. "Who is it?" "I'm busy." Songyu, who was wearing an apron, opened the door and saw Sushinshin. She couldn't help but be stunned. Then her eyes wandered somewhat guiltily, and she said in a voice that gave people a sense of concealment, "What's the matter, what's the matter?" Although he really wanted to complain about the full menu that could be called aphrodisiac for an hour, Sushinshin thought about it and felt that the matter related to his safety female clothing was more important, so he forced a horrified smile and was about to say something. "Is your face cramping?" But Songyu was one step ahead of him. "No, don't mind it." Sushinshin rubbed his somewhat stiff face and returned to his usual expression. "Let me ask, Songyu, do you dislike maids?" Do you like maids?" A suspicious blush appeared on Songyu's face and she seemed to be a little shy. She said in a weak mosquito voice, I don't really dislike it. If you must, then Songyu, do you dislike maids when receiving guests?" Sushinshin didn't pay attention to the other's following words, but after confirming that Songyu didn't dislike maids, he asked with great interest. Do you like maids?" Songyu's face suddenly became pale as if all the blood had disappeared. "No, I can't. This kind of thing, no matter what, it's..." Although he didn't know what she was referring to, even someone like Sushinshin, who had a low EQ, could understand that the other party seemed to have made a mistake. He quickly explained the whole thing, which made Songyu calm down. "In that case, can't you say it clearly earlier?" Songyu patted her rather large chest. "You scared me to death." "Then about maids?" Sushinshin asked Songyu like a henchman often seen in TV dramas. "It's not impossible." Songyu's index finger touched her chin and thought for a moment. "But I have conditions." "Old madam, please speak," Sushinshin said submissively. "After this, accompany me to go shopping," Songyu said without hesitation. "Why does this request feel so déjà vu?" Sushinshin muttered to himself. "Then do you agree or not?" "Of course I agree. This is a must. After all, it was just shopping." Sushinshin, who rode a little sheep back and forth in Jiangjin every day, expressed that he didn't care at all. This was a small alley between the skyscrapers of Jiangjin City. A figure fell from the sky with a bang and fell onto a pile of black garbage bags, scaring a few stray cats that were searching for food. After a while, a figure wearing something similar to a spacesuit, but looked like a child with short arms and legs, subtly and somewhat funny, climbed out of the garbage bags. The information frequency modulation is complete. I can finally enter this world. Oh, the air quality here is extremely poor and it's filled with a foul smell. It's hard to believe that this is the location of a level 3 civilization. But judging from the composition of the atmosphere, it's still possible to survive. After taking off her helmet, the girl took a deep breath and then her whole face turned purple. Wah, it stinks. After thinking for a while, she put on her helmet again, then turned around and rummaged through the garbage bags for a moment before pulling out an antique suitcase. Interestingly, although this suitcase looked about the size of a briefcase and had a very funny patch on the front, when she opened it and flattened it, she found that it was not the inside of the suitcase, but a pitch-black staircase that led to the bottom. The girl walked in without hesitation. After a while she came out, but at this time she was holding something that looked like a compass in her hand. I didn't think that there would be a time when I would need this. The girl sighed. The serial number of the object in her hand was UK091, tentatively named the Compass of Misfortune, free translation. The girl found it in the ruins of a civilization. No matter where the holder wanted to go or what they were looking for, as long as they made a wish, UK091 would point them in the right direction. For example, if they made a wish like, "I want the most precious treasure in the world," it would guide the holder to a raw stone that surpassed the largest gem in existence. However, there was a price to pay for using this thing. Depending on the place or the thing they were looking for, UK091 would give them a corresponding misfortune. A large part of the reason why the civilization that the girl saw was destroyed was because of the excessive use of UK091. Now, please find the location of UK004 for me. Chapter 267. After the girl finished speaking, the spoon-shaped needle on the compass of misfortune began to spin faster and faster. In the end, the entire compass shook slightly. After 3 or 4 minutes, the spoon-shaped needle began to slow down. However, after waiting for a long time, the needle did not really stop. Instead, it kept shaking in a range. It seemed that there was no way to identify the direction in more detail. Seeing this situation, the girl could not help but frown and show a serious expression. There were generally 2 possibilities for this situation with the compass of misfortune. The first was that it was interfered with by another UK. However, although UK004 was one of the most dangerous UK, it did not have the ability to interfere with the compass of misfortune. The other possibility was that UK004 had parasitized the world's most information-rich thing and evolved because it had obtained enough information, so it could affect the compass of misfortune. If it was the first possibility, it would be fine. However, if it was the second possibility, then things would be troublesome. This is not good. As a mistake made when she was young, the girl had used the compass of misfortune many times. Therefore, she never had any expectations for her luck. Although things like UK were not a secret in the Space Administration, even including the Datum world, among the hundreds of thousands of worlds directly under the jurisdiction of the Space Administration, there were only less than 3 digits of UKs. Every time a UK appeared, it would be stored as quickly and tightly as possible. Therefore, most of the members of the Space Administration thought that UK was just like an urban legend. After the girl took over as the 7th executor, she was ordered to go to the 3rd type of world, which was to manage the recovery of UKs from the outer world. The number of outer worlds under their jurisdiction was much more than the number of sovereign worlds under the direct management of the Space Administration. Many of the outer worlds were as vast as the universe where Earth was located. If it wasn't for the fact that the UK's information signature was very obvious, and the fact that the Violet was equipped with the latest technology of the Space Administration, 3,000 years ago, the girl might not have been found even if she spent tens of thousands of years. UK was an abbreviation and the full name was unknown. Of course, because the Datum world where the Space Administration was located was not English, this was also a free translation after entering the Earth. Everyone just needed to understand the meaning. Unknown, the body is unknown. Among the known UKs, some were objects, some were creatures, and some were even abstract concepts, such as diseases. Even the Space Administration did not have a reliable answer as to how UK was created. But what was certain was that the UK would not be born in a place where the information variable was less than or equal to the operating rules of the world. The UK would only be born in a place where the amount of information was far greater than the natural environment. In other words, they would inevitably appear beside intelligent creatures. For example, if a UK was born in the solar system where the Earth was located, then it was very likely that it would appear among the people on the Earth and not in the empty space of the universe. Regardless of that, most of the UKs were not safe. Almost all UKs were intrinsically a tangled, distorted, and indecipherable information tumor. Not only that, they could also affect the information of things they came into contact with, causing incomprehensible information proliferation and explosion, ultimately leading to all sorts of undesirable outcomes. Until now, the girl had seen quite a few civilizations destroyed by UKs. In any case, he should find UK-004 as soon as possible. With that thought in mind, the girl stuffed the compass into the chest of her spacesuit. She was about to leave the alley and head in the general direction that the compass needle was pointing. As soon as she walked to the entrance of the alley, she saw a blue and white police car drifting and stopping at the entrance of the alley. Then a young man in a police uniform walked out, but for some reason his legs seemed to be trembling. "Hello," he said to the girl, but when he saw that the girl did not respond, he tried to change his language. "Hello? Oh, hello. Bonjour, French. Ciao, Italian. Hello. *ck, this won't work. Well, hello from Korea, you should say it like this." "Well, wait a minute." The girl interrupted him. "I can understand you." Although it took some time to sample and analyze the world, or the common language of this area, the technology of the Space Administration had always been trustworthy. "Oh, that's good. To be honest, after graduation I even returned English to my teacher." The other party showed a grateful smile. "When I was talking about other languages, I was afraid that you would answer, so I threw out a bunch of foreign languages." The girl showed a puzzled look. She could not understand what the other party was trying to say. Although the girl's expression could not be seen because of the hood, her confused emotions seemed to have been conveyed. The other party did not continue to talk nonsense. Instead, he said seriously, "Since you can understand me, then I won't beat around the bush. Are you a monster or a warlock?" After asking the Violet's AI to inquire about the two words monster and warlocked through telepathy, the girl's feedback was basically mythical novels and the like. She could not help but become even more confused. "Did you make a mistake?" Seeing the girl's look, the other party was also a little shaken. "The new equipment detected energy fluctuations here not long ago. You made a mistake?" So the girl simply went with the flow and said, "Your words are persuasive." The other party looked at the girl's clothes, which looked like a spacesuit no matter how you looked at it, and said awkwardly, "It's not persuasive at all, okay?" As soon as the voice trailed off, the girl's clothes turned into a common casual style, and even the logo on it was vivid. "It's too late to change now, hey?" The other party covered his forehead and looked like he was having a toothache. "Anyway, come with me to the police station first." At this time, the girl had already connected to the Earth's network through the nanocomputer built into her brain. Then she did as the Romans did, and after Baidu the police station, she decided to go with the other party. First of all, the bracelet on the young man's wrist had a mysterious power that even the Violet's AI could not analyze. Obviously, the other party was not an ordinary native of this world, and it was not in line with the style of the Space Administration. Second of all, she might be able to find some useful information at the police station. After entering the police car, the other party suddenly said, "By the way, I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Xiao Jingyi." The girl's answer was concise. Xiao Jingyi muttered something and then reluctantly started the car engine. As a result, the car's audio system suddenly lit up, and then a cheerful voice said, "Hey boy. You're finally back. Let's drive on the road at 180 miles per hour. It's going to cause trouble for the traffic police, be more like it." Xiao Jingyi, who used to be an experienced driver, said tiredly, "Can't you just drive properly? It's rare that I've found a way to use the drainage canal to drive around the bend. We don't have 5 consecutive hairpin bends here. And I don't plan to race with others." Xiao Jingyi sighed. "Why are you guys always so worrisome?" Looking at the car's audio system that was quarreling with Xiao Jingyi, the girl's eyes widened in surprise, as if she had seen something unbelievable. This is an unconfirmed UK. Chapter 268. For the time being, let's shift our focus from the unlucky criminal police officer and the equally unlucky visitor from another world who, in a sense, could also be considered a police officer. Back to the protagonist. After successfully persuading Song Yu, Su Shinxing naturally planned to drag the other two residents of Sakura Apartments down with him. Although Chiketsu was a little embarrassed to do this, Su Shinxing was her brother after all, so he should teach the girl about the sinister hearts of this world. That's true, but where did the two of them go? Su Shinxing asked Song Yu. I think they went to the supermarket. I don't know why, but Qin Xingyan shook her head with a wry smile when she saw the ingredients I prepared. Chiketsu also followed her out at that time. Song Yu answered casually. So that's why. Su Shinxing glanced at the things in the kitchen. Admittedly, Song Yu's cooking was pretty good and chives and eggs were considered common dishes, but the other things were subtly a little too heavy for the average girl. Or rather, the wolfberry yam puree, mutton sea cucumber and pig kidney soup weren't for the average person's taste buds at all. For this reason, it was understandable that Qin Xingyan went out to buy some other ingredients. In this respect, the cultivator girl was probably the most normal person in the entire Sakura Apartments. Or rather, as expected of Xingyan a dream. She could already fast for a short period of time, so not eating or drinking for a few days was nothing to her, but she still went out to buy ingredients for the safety of everyone in the apartment. All in all, it didn't seem like they went too far. There were only a few supermarkets nearby, so they probably wouldn't miss it if they kept an eye out on the road. So Su Shinxing planned to go out and directly tell them about the maid outfits and pick them up while he was at it. Emily, I'm going out for a bit, do you want to come with me? I refuse. Accompanied by the words Bala Zero Energy, Wu Karaka Magic Transformation, from the TV, Emily's reply was as concise and clear as ever. Since Emily was so obsessed with animation, Su Shinxing could only go out on his own. Mr. Su, will you pass by the express delivery when you go out? Sakura Kanji suddenly asked. Oh, it's on the way, right? What's wrong? Su Shinxing asked curiously. If it's convenient for you, please help me with the package inside. Miss Witch said with a hopeful look on her face, but then her expression turned serious again. Also, if possible, please try not to open the package outside. Are those your personal belongings? Su Shinxing could understand this. It seemed that most girls didn't want their personal belongings, such as underwear and some small cosmetics, to be seen by strange men. No, it's nothing to me, but if you open it outside. Miss Witch's expression became even more serious. My words? Su Shinxing looked puzzled. Could it be some kind of dangerous item? However, with Su Shinxing's current strength, let alone a bomb package, even if it was wrapped in a miniature nuclear bomb, it probably wouldn't have any effect on him. Thinking about it this way, there was probably nothing in the world that Su Shinxing didn't dare to take, right? Even if it was seafood, as long as he didn't eat it, it shouldn't be a problem. If you open it outside and it's seen by others, you'll be in danger of being mistaken for a gay man. Well, it seemed that there were still things in this world that could make Su Shinxing feel fear from the bottom of his heart. So what do you want me to bring back? At this moment, Su Shinxing suddenly had a feeling that he was inviting a wolf into the house by letting Sakura Kokoro Asahi live in Sakura apartment. In short, after suffering a sudden mental blow, Su Shinxing walked out of the apartment in a daze. Fortunately, his years of poverty made him remember to close the door after he left. After asking his ghosts that had returned from their travels around the world to look for Jiang Yu and the others, Su Shinxing was just about to leave the courtyard when he felt a light tugging at the hem of his clothes. Su Shinxing subconsciously looked back and found that Jiang Yu, whom he hadn't seen for a long time, had appeared behind him. Jiang Yu, has your body recovered? Su Shinxing was pleasantly surprised. Ever since her head pierced through Lux's dimensional ship, Jiang Yu had disappeared due to a certain degree of injury, and it seemed that she hadn't recovered. Even when Su Shinxing and the others deliberately went to the museum to look at River Moon, they couldn't see the girl. He didn't expect her to appear now. However, when he took a closer look, he found that the girl's body was still a little translucent, and it seemed that she hadn't fully recovered. Coffee shop. I want to go too. She held on to Su Shinxing's clothes with one hand, lowered her head and said softly as if she was a little shy. It seemed that when he explained the situation to Song Yu or Chihaya Fukuyama, this girl also heard it. Because Jiang Yu's presence was weak, and no one noticed her wandering around Sakura apartments for a long time, Su Shinxing quickly accepted it. I'm fine. It's better to say that the more people there are, the better. But is your body okay now? Su Shinxing asked with concern. At that time, one day, Should be fine, the girl replied softly. Is that so? Su Shenxing vaguely understood. The girl had probably recovered her ability to move for some time, but just like before, no one could see her, so naturally no one could communicate with her. If it was in the past, Jiang Yu was already used to being alone, so it didn't matter. However, after moving around with the people of Sakura apartment and experiencing the lively and happy atmosphere, suddenly returning to the situation of being alone naturally made Jiang Yu feel even more lonely. So, even though Jiang Yu was the shy type, she still took the initiative to show up, hoping to become a member of the maid coffee shop. After understanding this, Su Shenxing naturally held onto the girl's hand. Then, under the girl's confused gaze, he smiled and said, I feel too lonely looking for Xingyan and Chiketsu on my own. Jiang Yu, why don't you come with us? As a result, the girl's shy expression turned into a bright smile. She nodded her head vigorously and held onto Su Shenxing's hand tightly. In the afternoon, the sun had already begun to set in the west, spreading a warm and gentle light. Just like that, the two of them slowly walked out of the courtyard as if they were taking a stroll. Their shadows were also drawn out under the sunlight and then gradually merged together. Speaking of which, I still need to get Asahi the BL reader I bought from the Mike Market. Chapter 269. UK. What's that? Is it a type of Uma? Xiao Jingyi tried his best to control the steering wheel so that the police car wouldn't cause too much trouble for the others. At the same time, he also took the time to talk to the girl he just found who claimed to be Ying. Although the girl's face couldn't be seen, at least from her voice, she should be a girl. Have you never seen Death God Fu or Ordinary Monsters? Death God Fu? The girl obviously couldn't understand the term Xiao Jingyi said. After repeating it once, she fell silent. That's right. Judging from your equipment, it's more reasonable to say that you're a technological being like a person from the future or an alien. Although I've never seen those kinds of people. Xiao Jingyi sighed and said casually. Because there were always some messy things happening in Jiangjin every day. When he first took over as the director of the super administrative office, he was often shocked or panicked. But after being shocked and panicked every day, he got used to it over time. Now that he encountered supernatural emergencies, not only was he able to remain calm and collected, but as long as the situation wasn't life-threatening, he was even in the mood to play a game of Gwent first. The so-called Death God Fu refers to things like items that have been left for too long, and thus, it absorbs the essence of heaven and earth, accumulates resentment or feels Buddha nature and spiritual power, and thus obtains a soul and turns into a monster. The girl didn't wait for Xiao Jingyi to finish his sentence and finished what he wanted to say. What, don't you know it very well? Xiao Jingyi narrowed his eyes and looked at the other party through the rearview mirror. Unfortunately, the other party's mask still faithfully covered its owner's appearance, so Xiao Jingyi couldn't see the other party's expression. Death God Fu isn't the UK I'm talking about. In my travels, although it's rare, I've seen creatures similar to the Death God Fu you're talking about. Ying didn't seem to hear the slight sarcasm in Xiao Jingyi's words. She just said, but the vehicle we're taking now is undoubtedly a type of UK. At the very least, it's a derivative of the information distortion caused by the relationship with the UK. I say, strange astronaut girl, she gave face to the owner boy and didn't say anything, but you keep treating her as a UK, that's too much. The police car's sound system suddenly made an opposing sound. Although I don't know what a UK is from your attitude, I'm afraid it's not a good thing. From the perspective of road safety laws, you're not a good thing. Xiao Jingyi whispered. All right, let's go at 120 kilometers per hour. Stop it. Do you want me to resign? It's okay, I'll pay the siren. That's not the problem. Don't race us to the city. Finally, I'll stop at XX Club. Wait a minute, how you to know that place? Fong Fong's twos to a point, A to A girl. No. Xiao Jingyi let out a tragic cry. Can bring misfortune to people, this thing really is a UK. Ying in the back seat also began to add to the chaos. The nature of a UK is distorted, can't be analyzed, and will affect the surrounding things, causing them to also become distorted information tumors. The most common manifestation is that it has some kind of incredible power. But the problem is, there are many things with incredible power in this city, right? Xiao Jingyi was stunned. Not to mention other things, just the existence of the bastard police car. His family currently had about 200 of them. From this point of view, until now Xiao Jingyi's mental state was still normal. It was already very amazing. After walking for a while, Jiang Yu disappeared because she needed to reserve power for the school anniversary. In the end, Su Xinxing could only carry a bag of suspicious smell alone on the road to the supermarket. What did you find them? Fortunately, not long after, one of the spirit ghosts floated to Su Xinxing's side, gesticulating to him for a while. Thus, Su Xinxing followed the spirit ghost to Qin Xingyan and Chiketsu's location. A brother. The sharp-eyed Chiketsu saw Su Xinxing, carried the plastic bag and ran over to him with small steps. Her hard-soled leather boots made patter sounds on the sidewalk, and her innocent smile was extremely cute. As expected of my sister. While Su Xinxing gave a thumbs up in his heart, he reached out and hugged the little Chiketsu who was running over. At the same time, he took a small step back to disperse the girl's momentum. This little bit of force naturally didn't affect Su Xinxing, but the problem was that Chiketsu probably felt like his head hit an iron plate. In order to continue to enjoy this kind of hug from his sister in the future, Su Xinxing had no choice but to use the method he practiced in the other world to disperse the force, and use his excellent control to do this. However, his actions were obviously noticed by Qin Xingyan. When Su Xinxing raised his head with a silly smile, he saw that the girl was looking at him with a very subtle gaze. If he had to make an analogy, it was probably the kind of gaze that looked at a beast. This gaze stung him very much. Ahem, Su Xinxing tried to restrain the smile on his face, and asked Chiketsu seriously, "What did you buy at the supermarket?" "Food." Chiketsu answered honestly. "Chiketsu, if you hug your brother like this, it will be very inconvenient for him. Can you come down first?" Qin Xingyan said to Chiketsu with a smile that Su Xinxing felt was murderous. No. Even if Chiketsu was literally heavier than Mount Tai, Su Xinxing would be able to lift him up with one hand for his sister. But obviously Chiketsu was a considerate child. After hearing Qin Xingyan's words, he obediently jumped out of Su Xinxing's arms, leaving Su Xinxing with a look of disappointment. But our protagonist was also a strong-willed person, so he quickly adjusted his mood. Seeing that Qin Xingyan was still looking at him with a faint smile, he decided to change the topic. "What did you buy?" "We bought papaya, milk, royal jelly, pig trotters, carp." Chiketsu immediately began to list out the items as if he was very familiar with them. "Wait a minute. Why do I feel like there's something strange about this shopping list?" Su Xinxing's mouth twitched. "Ah, Sister Xingyan said that my brother likes girls with big breasts, so she told me to eat more." Chiketsu continued. "Miss Qin Xingyan, do you have anything to say?" Su Xinxing asked Qin Xingyan, who had a nonchalant expression on her face. "I'm just concerned about Chiketsu's growth. Is there a problem? My Lilicon Siscon, Mr. Landlord?" The girl asked fearlessly. Not good. What she said made sense. I was speechless. Su Xinxing thought about it and decided to bow down to Xingyan's a dream. Chapter 270. Although he had said so much, Qin Xingyan was actually the easiest to convince. Qin Xingyan had been cultivating in the Bailu Temple since she was a child. She even went to the moon for a period of time to further her studies. The education that Qin Xingyan was exposed to was basically the traditional type of education. Therefore, she also inherited the personality of a traditional Chinese woman. Although she would occasionally be a little black-bellied and jealous, this would not affect the girl's gentle character. Therefore, Su Xinxing successfully convinced Qin Xingyan to agree to the maid outfit without much effort. As for Chiketsu, it was even easier. The little girl was already relying on Su Xinxing. In addition, Sister Xingyan, who took care of her a lot, also agreed to the maid outfit. The little girl naturally had no resistance to it. Therefore, after 6 chapters of progress, Su Xinxing finally achieved the achievement of getting all the tenants of Sakura apartment, except for Su Xinxing himself, to agree to the maid outfit. "Let me carry it," Su Xinxing said as he took the ingredients from the two of them. Because of Chiketsu's presence, Qin Xingyan, who was already able to use the heaven and earth sleeve technique, could not openly put away the ingredients. She could only carry them with Chiketsu. "Brother, is it heavy?" Chiketsu stared at Su Xinxing with her big watery eyes and asked softly. "Don't worry, I have good stamina." Su Shinxing rolled up his sleeves and bent his arms to make a bodybuilding pose. You don't look like you have much muscle. Why do you have so much strength? Qin Xingyan couldn't help but poke Su Shinxing's arm. Respect yourself, don't touch me, girl. Su Shinxing coughed and took a step back. After fooling around for a while, Su Shinxing carried the ingredients in one hand and held Chiketsu's hand in the other as they walked home. Chiketsu's other hand was holding Qin Xingyan's hand. At first glance they looked like a family of three. The only thing that seemed out of place was that Qin Xingyan was too young to be a mother. As for Su Shinxing, don't mention his uncle face. Just as the three people, mainly Su Shinxing and Qin Xingyan, were running away under the surprised gazes of other pedestrians, a police car drifted and stopped in front of them. Su Shinxing looked at the license plate and immediately understood where the car came from. Xiao Jingyi, are you planning to switch careers and become a racing car driver? He said with a cold face. Although Su Shinxing was confident that even if it was a Mercedes-Benz car at 200 km per hour, the problem was that Chiketsu was also there. The little girl had never seen such a scene before. She was so shocked that she was still in a daze. If it weren't for Su Shinxing and Qin Xingyan on either side of her, the girl who was traumatized by the car accident would probably have been scared to tears. This situation naturally made Su Shinxing, who claimed not to have a sister complex, a little angry. If you don't plan to explain yourself, you can only lie in the hospital bed and eat liquid food for dinner tonight. This is assault on a police officer. Xiao Jingyi, who had just walked out of the police car, trembled and subconsciously complained. Then he saw the little girl next to Su Shinxing. Oh, this is your sister. She's different from you, so cute. Little girl, uncle has bananas. Wait, old Su, I'm kidding, don't use your fingers to make your death omen is shining in the sky. Gesture. So what are you doing here? Su Shinxing asked with an unfriendly face. It's about the case I'm working on. There are some situations that may need your help. Well, can you continue? Xiao Jingyi glanced at Chiketsu, which made the little girl timidly hide behind Qin Xingyan. By the way, Qin Xingyan was also looking at Xiao Jingyi with a disgusted expression, which made the police officer feel very uncomfortable. Su Shinxing was silent for a moment, then said to Qin Xingyan, you and Chiketsu go back first, I want to talk to him alone. Okay, if there's anything, remember to call me. Qin Xingyan wasn't pretentious, he knew that Su Shinxing and Xiao Jingyi might talk about some supernatural things, so he just nodded obediently, took the girl's hand and quickly left. After watching them leave, Su Shinxing asked curiously, can you tell me now? What's going on? Get in the car first, I'll take you to see the person involved, we'll talk about it on the way. Xiao Jingyi made a pleased gesture to Su Shinxing. Su Shinxing didn't stand on ceremony, he opened the car door and got in. But then he vaguely heard the old women who were looking at him with surprise just now start to gossip again, saying things like he really did have sex with an underage girl. Look, the police are here to arrest him. It's said that the minimum sentence is 3 years, the maximum sentence is death. It must be the 4 religions, it's so disgusting. Shut up, it's your thoughts that are disgusting. Su Shinxing roared in his heart. Maybe it was because the police car was more perceptive. After Su Shinxing got in, it didn't cause any trouble. Instead, it pretended to be an ordinary car stereo and it played the most ethnic music on loop. Even the driving was completely different from the biker gang just now. It drove honestly and safely, it didn't even make a sudden drift when it stopped. It used a smooth and steady movement that made all the experienced drivers feel ashamed of their inferiority to stop in the parking lot of the police station. This made Xiao Jingyi, who wanted Su Shinxing to fix it, very disappointed. What you mean is, not long ago an alien suddenly came and then she said that there might be an unknown object called UK under Jiangjin that would cause a huge disaster, so she needed her spaceship to come to Jiangjin's airspace to carry out the construction? After listening to Xiao Jingyi's explanation, Su Shinxing's face was full of surprise. The real estate prices in the Celestial Empire have risen to the point that even the profiteers in the universe are alarmed. No, I don't think she meant to develop real estate. Xiao Jingyi made a face and ridiculed. In short, from her performance she doesn't seem to be a hostile species, so now I'm letting Feng Shaoqing watch her. Speaking of which, aren't you surprised to hear that there are aliens? You're still too young, I've seen a lot of things like aliens. Su Shinxing pretended to be calm and indifferent. Have you seen the Death Star in Star Wars? I was talking and laughing with its commander in the control room. Although after that, the planet fortress that the rebel army had high hopes for was split in half by Su Shenxing's sword, it didn't even make a fart before it was finished. Oh yeah, I got it. Xiao Jingyi obviously didn't believe Su Shenxing's words. He just waved his hand perfunctorily. You can say this to that guy. As he spoke, he brought Su Shenxing into the office of the super administrator. Chapter 271. 8. After entering the office, they communicated with the, presumably, alien emissary who was suspected of speculating in land. Finally, they went back to their own homes. Su Shenxing originally planned to do so. However, after entering the office, there was no one inside. What about the guy you mentioned? Su Shenxing asked Xiao Jingyi, who brought him here. This. Xiao Jingyi, who was also confused, came back to his senses and grinned as if he had a toothache. He glanced at the silver lamp representing Feng Xiaoqing's soul in the office display cabinet. This was one of the benefits of the super management office, or one of the office supplies. The current state of the members of the super management office could be judged by the candlelight on it. The flame on the silver lamp was no different from usual. Feng Xiaoqing should not be in any danger. He motioned for Su Shenxing to sit anywhere and then sat down in his own seat. He took out his domestic mobile phone from his pocket and said, "Wait a minute, I'll call Feng Xiaoqing and ask." After a while the phone was connected. "Hello Xiaoqing, where are you now?" "What, the mall?" Ignoring Su Shenxing's playful expression, Xiao Jingyi continued to ask shamelessly, "Is the guy I brought with you? It's good to be together." Probably afraid that the more he said, the more Su Shenxing could use against him. So after chatting for a while, Xiao Jingyi hung up the phone. "How is it?" Su Shenxing asked casually. Although he could hear the voice on the phone if he listened carefully, Su Shenxing still had some morals after all. He would not casually eavesdrop on the young couple's conversation. "Because the guy named Ing is dressed too strangely. Just like I told you in the car, she has been wearing a set of clothes similar to a spacesuit." Xiaoqing felt that this did not seem very good, so she took her to buy clothes. "It's the newly opened mall in the city center recently." Xiao Jingyi shrugged. "We can wait here for them to come back. If you are in a hurry, we can go to the mall." "Let's go over." Su Shenxing sighed. "I'm different from you. My family is waiting for me to go back for dinner." Although the dishes were not aphrodisiac, the fact that they were breast enlargement made him feel a little subtle. "Alright, let's go then." Xiao Jingyi put his finger in the car key ring and spun it twice before standing up from his seat. With Su Shenxing in charge, the old police car naturally didn't dare to make any trouble. The two of them safely arrived at the newly opened shopping mall. Although it wasn't a holiday today, there were still a lot of people who came out to shop because it was already past the rush hour. Therefore, at first glance, it felt like there was a sea of people inside. Xiaoqing and the others are selling women's clothing on the second floor. "Wait, let me see where the elevator is." Although Xiao Jingyi was already the boss of Jiang Jin's super administrative office, he was still just an ordinary person. He was sweating profusely as he squeezed through the crowd. He hurriedly turned back and said, "Old Su, follow me closely. Be careful not to get lost." "Faster, Xike, where are they?" On the other hand, with Su Shenxing's physical strength, not to mention in this kind of shopping mall, even during the supermarket special price period, he could come and go freely among a group of aunties with explosive fighting power. However, just after walking a few steps behind Xiao Jingyi, he found that something was wrong. There was something in the crowd. Since Su Shenxing's perception wasn't outstanding, the things that he could sense were naturally much stronger than ordinary abnormal things. Therefore, he didn't continue to follow Xiao Jingyi. Anyway, according to Xiao Jingyi, the guy who seemed to be an alien didn't seem to be dangerous. In contrast, Su Shenxing was naturally more concerned about the strange aura in the crowd. It didn't take long for him to find a strange thing. No, to be precise, it should be a strange creature. That creature should be a spirit creature like a ghost spirit, but it was different from a ghost spirit that had a fixed shape, although it could change shape. It was floating about 2 meters in the air, and it was more like a slime in an amorphous state. At this time, that creature was releasing many tentacles, and those tentacles were connected to some ordinary people in the shopping mall. But those ordinary people didn't seem to feel anything, and they just continued to do what they were originally doing. Although he didn't feel any danger from that thing, and those who were touched by the tentacles didn't show any symptoms of vitality being absorbed, Su Xinxing felt that that thing was a bit strange. According to Su Xinxing's creed, if he couldn't solve a problem he would try physics first. So he was going to pretend to stretch his back and quietly punch the thing to kill it. However, that thing quickly retracted its tentacles as if it felt murderous intent, and then flew away in the direction away from Su Xinxing. I was discovered. Su Xinxing muttered and chased after that thing. Even if he squeezed people away on the way he could only hurriedly apologize. Fortunately, that thing didn't seem to have high intelligence. It didn't fly into the crowd or rely on the convenient ability of a spirit to escape through the wall. Instead it flew to a secluded escape passage. So Su Xinxing also chased after it. As a result, when he opened the door of the escape passage, he saw a girl in a pale pink dress trying to close an old-fashioned suitcase. The old-fashioned suitcase looked dirty and seemed to be old, but what Su Xinxing couldn't figure out was that there was a patch-like thing on it. He didn't know if it was the design of the suitcase itself, or it was really patched for some other reason. Just as Su Xinxing was about to continue to chase, the girl suddenly raised her head. The pair of purple-red inorganic eyes made Su Xinxing almost subconsciously understand one thing. This girl was not human. Who are you? Since it wasn't something that couldn't be communicated with like slime, Su Xinxing naturally wouldn't rush up and punch her directly in the face. "Dad," he asked. "I should be the one asking you this question, right?" The girl didn't answer Su Xinxing's question. Instead, she pressed the suitcase as if she was facing a formidable enemy. "An ordinary person," Su Xinxing replied as usual. Then he noticed that the girl's words were not spoken in Chinese or any language on Earth. "Don't joke around. An existence like you can't be a native creature of this planet or even this world. Since you have grown to this extent, it means that you have destroyed at least one civilization." Su Xinxing was sure that it was the first time he met the other party, but for some reason the other party was full of hostility towards him. The reason why he didn't deny her words was that in a sense Su Xinxing did destroy several civilizations including the Great Devil Realm. "Who are you?" So Su Xinxing asked again. After a moment of silence, the girl answered slowly. "Your kind UK002, the cancer of the world, Ing." Chapter 272. A long time ago in a certain world there was a little girl. She was very ordinary but also very special. She was able to retain the memories of her previous life, but in every life she would die tragically before reaching adulthood due to various accidents. She was eaten by wild beasts, died of an incurable disease in that era, burned to death as a witch after revealing her past memories, trampled to death by horses in a war, killed as food in an era where there was a lack of food due to years of poor harvests, bitten to death by rats without any treatment, frozen to death in a corner in the cold winter without any food to fill her stomach or firewood to warm her up, involved in a car accident and turned into minced meat, fire, flood, earthquake, typhoon. She died again and again and was born again and again. How long did this painful reincarnation last? She didn't know which life it was, but she planted a plant that was said to have a long lifespan but would never bloom. Then in every life she would find that plant, take care of it, tell it everything and wait for it to grow and bloom. The ornamental plant that was originally only the size of a palm, after countless years, finally grew to the size of a tree. And the girl was still repeating the painful reincarnation. Her spirit once collapsed, but she would wake up again after endless time, and then be forcibly defeated by the pain again. "I curse this endless reincarnation, I curse my life, I curse everything in this world. It would be great if this world was destroyed." After going crazy for God knows how many times, the girl leaned on the tree-like plant and issued a curse full of malice and resentment. That night she was raped to death by a few passing drunkards. It was as if her curse had taken effect. Her endless cycle of reincarnation had come to an end in this tragic situation. Then the world changed. The land of the world was polluted and no plants could be grown. The water source also gradually lost the ability to irrigate crops. The world seemed to have taken back everything that it had generously given to people. Humans were in despair. Believers worshipped the only tree in this barren land that could still maintain its green color as a god. Scientists believed that they could find a way to grow crops again from this plant, while the starving humans only wanted to eat the plant to fill their stomachs. But in the end no one succeeded. When the world was on the verge of destruction, the last human on Earth suddenly realized that this plant was not some god, but the culprit that destroyed the entire world. Planets, galaxies, universes, worlds. When this plant completely destroyed a world, it did not disappear with the destruction of the world. Instead, it wandered to other worlds and continued the unfinished curse. When the first executor of the Space Administration found it, the plant had already taken root in one world and extended its branches to 8 other worlds, becoming a true world tree. Unfortunately, it was different from most world trees in legends. It was the destroyer of worlds, the cancer of the world. The first executor used the technology of the Space Administration and his own abilities to understand what had happened. He then cut off the root of the world tree and found a bud in the crown of the world tree. What was born from it was a little girl. According to the name of this plant in the civilization of the destroyed world, the first executor named the little girl who inherited the power of the cancer of the world Ing. He personally taught and raised the little girl. Because the first executor did not deliberately hide Ying's background, Ing knew that she was born with the sin of destroying several worlds. After Ing became an adult, the existence of the UK was finally confirmed by the Space Administration. The girl did not intend to shirk this crime. Instead, in order to repay her sins, she took the initiative to wander the endless worlds, looking for and taking in other UKs, protecting those worlds that were in danger. To her, all UKs were her compatriots. She also knew that most of the UKs did not want to destroy the world. But reality would not change according to their will. Their existence would lead the world to destruction. So she was kind to all UKs, but she would not let the UKs wander in the ordinary world. I don't have the same kind. Su Xinxing and the other party looked at each other for a long time and slowly said. The girl did not have the intention to argue with Su Xinxing. She just stood up the suitcase in her hand. The metal buckle on the edge of the suitcase opened automatically with a click. Although I haven't found UK-004 yet, I won't let such a dangerous existence like you run around. Oh? Su Xinxing raised his eyebrows. What do you want to do? Capture me or even more directly kill me? I don't want to harm you, but please understand that all UKs are harmful to the normal world. The girl said seriously. If you are willing to leave this world with me and abide by the rules, then I can still guarantee you a certain degree of freedom. I refuse. Su Xinxing did not hesitate to reject the other party's proposal. That's a pity. The girl sighed as if she was really disappointed with Su Xinxing's decision from the bottom of her heart. If that's the case, then I can only use force. Biological UKs are not affected by the interference of normal information. They will only affect normal information in the opposite direction. In the normal world, they will not be injured or die. They are almost invincible. Therefore, they will often uncontrollably cause damage to the world. They are proud of their power and will not regret it. Following her words, the brown suitcase also opened a small hole. The girl took out a coin from inside and threw it on the ground. Su Xinxing suddenly felt as if he was pulled into an abnormal space. Could this be the so-called barrier to facilitate the development of the plot? Before he could complain, the girl kicked over the suitcase. The suitcase also opened because of her movement. The only thing that can interfere and affect UKs is other UKs. Unfortunately, for thousands of years, I have not done anything else but collect UKs. Countless crystal-clear branches shot out from the suitcase and shrouded Su Xinxing in an imposing manner as if they were going to shoot him into a sieve. I don't know what you have experienced. Facing this overwhelming attack, Su Xinxing did not even have the thought of dodging. He just waved his fist fiercely. He did not even touch the crystal branches, but the crystal branches were like glass products that hit an iron wall. They shattered into sparkling fragments and slowly fell down like snow. For a moment, the scene was even quite beautiful. However, Su Xinxing was not in the mood to enjoy this beautiful scene, because a huge lizard with eyes on its head had already crawled out of the suitcase. The scene of a big fat man squeezing out of a biscuit-sized hole was very strange and funny. However, the lizard did not hesitate to attack Su Xinxing. However, Su Xinxing crushed the lizard's head with one foot. The moment it regenerated, he blasted it into smithereens with a punch. However, the giant lizard was not that simple. It seemed to be regenerating from the molecular level at an extremely fast speed. Su Xinxing was stunned for about 9¾ milliseconds. Then he smashed it into pieces with a punch. However, Jiangjin is still considered my territory for the time being. It's better for you to behave. In the next moment when the girl released a new monster, Su Xinxing used the high-speed rail of an ordinary person and appeared behind her. Then he directly knocked out the cancer of the world who might have been able to destroy Earth if she fought personally and ended the battle. The meaning of this sentence was actually not that they were worried that the girl would be hurt by UK-004, but that the girl's threat to Earth was far greater than UK-004's. There are no signs of germination. After finding that there was no abnormality in her body, the girl was relieved. Then she began to worry about her suitcase. The only thing that could affect a UK was other UKs. Similarly, the suitcase that could accommodate so many UKs was actually UK-018, the Venator box. A box that could theoretically store everything. The box was filled with the fragments of destroyed worlds, and the UKs recovered by Ing were stored in the fragments of various worlds. However, Ing was still careless at that time, causing UK-018 to be bitten through by UK-004, allowing UK-004 to escape from it. This was also the origin of the patch on the Venator box. But then she found that her worries seemed to be unnecessary. It was because UK-018 was placed next to the bedside table. It seemed to have been washed and looked much cleaner. However, there were a few talismans stuck on the metal buckle, which seemed to be to prevent the things inside from escaping. But compared to the talismans, what really bound UK-018 was a strange power on the talismans. It was a kind of energy that was almost distorted by a UK, but it was slightly different. Oh, you're awake? At this time, the door of the room opened, and the man who knocked her out with one blow walked in with a small steaming casserole, then closed the door with his foot. Are you going to do me a favor and ask me to let you go? Ing asked in a low voice. I don't mean that. Anyway, you can't beat me. Su Xinxing smiled slightly. It's just that I'm not very good at talking about big principles, and I always think that it's difficult to persuade people with those overly righteous remarks. It was like telling others to cross the road by crossing the zebra crossing. Although it was a very correct statement in some narrow places where there were almost no cars passing by, and the zebra crossing was at the intersection more than 10 minutes away, saying this to people crossing the road would definitely cause displeasure. So instead of using words, I think it's faster to use physics and reality to make people understand, Su Xinxing said seriously. So, change into a maid's outfit and come with me. The girl was silent for a moment. Then she frowned. I always feel that your last sentence has nothing to do with the first sentence. You're mistaken, Su Xinxing denied firmly. Chapter 274. Because there was a considerable gap between her strength and Su Xinxing, her chances of winning in a head-on battle were almost zero. Even if she used other more dangerous UK, she was afraid that it would lead to the collapse and destruction of this world before the battle was over. Therefore, Ing decided to compromise with the other party in a short time and see what Su Xinxing's reality was before making any plans. In addition, finding UK-004 was also a top priority. Oh, you're awake. Seeing Ing obediently walking down the stairs behind Su Xinxing, Qin Xingyan, who was reading the news on his mobile phone, raised his head and showed the girl a hearty smile. How are you feeling? Thanks to this gentleman. Ing glared at Su Xinxing, then replied with a blank expression. I'm still healthy. Good. After Qin Xingyan finished speaking, he lowered his head again. It was not that this genius girl from the Bailu temple was addicted to her mobile phone and had become a person who lowered her head, but this girl was not very good at socializing. She only spoke to Ing out of politeness. After carefully sizing up Qin Xingyan, Ing asked curiously, excuse me, this. She raised her worn-out suitcase with one hand and pointed at the paper talismans on the metal buckle with the other hand. Did you put this on? Only UK could affect UK. This was the conclusion that Ing reached after traveling hundreds of thousands of worlds to search for UK for thousands of years. But these paper talismans on UK-018's virtual Sunluo suitcase broke the convention. They actually suppressed the UK in the suitcase that wanted to escape while she was unconscious. This made Ing a little excited. Maybe this time she had made a big discovery. Therefore, after seeing Qin Xingyan with the energy aura on the paper talismans, Ing couldn't help but ask. I did put it on, but if it's the ability to suppress the things in your suitcase, It has nothing to do with me. Qin Xingyan didn't take the credit for himself. Instead he answered truthfully, if it weren't for Su Shenxing, the landlord of this apartment, who set a special protection on my talismans, I'm afraid that my paper talismans alone wouldn't have been able to contain the things in the box. Is the person you're talking about the one who came down before me? Ing asked. Yes, that's right. Qin Xingyan nodded. But Ing suddenly became depressed. When a part of the UK was placed beside an item for a period of time, it would cause the item's information to be distorted. Although the distorted item itself wasn't a UK as a derivative of a UK, it could still affect other UK to some extent. However, it was unknown whether this effect came from the distorted item itself, or from the aura left on the item by the original UK. That's enough chatting. At this time Su Shenxing walked over from the living room. Xingyan, pack up and take this guy with you. We're going out together. Where are we going? Qin Xingyan switched his phone to standby mode and asked after stuffing it into his pocket. We're going to get the most important item for this event. Su Shenxing said with a serious face. I was wondering what it would be, but it turns out to be a maid outfit. And after talking about maid outfits for so long, we haven't even prepared a shadow yet. On the way to the tailor shop, Qin Xingyan couldn't help but complain. Although you can buy cheap maid outfits on the internet, those common maid outfits don't look good on you. I'm afraid that it won't be comfortable either. If you want to get a batch of good maid outfits, you'll have to make them close to your body. Su Shenxing explained logically, I know of a clothing store. The owner of the store started out as a tailor. She's really good at making clothes. How do you know so much about this kind of store? Qin Xingyan couldn't help but complain. Also, they're obviously going to make clothes. Why are the three of us the only ones going? What about the others? It doesn't matter. I've already gotten their measurements by beating around the bush. Su Shenxing righteously gave a thumbs up. The proud expression on his face made people who didn't know him think that he had accomplished something great. Although it's amazing that you're so well prepared, I don't know why I can't admire you. Qin Xingyan's head was filled with black lines. It was as if he was exhausted by Su Shenxing's imagination. As the three of them walked, light snow began to fall from the sky. Su Shenxing looked up at the sky and realized that the originally bright sky had unknowingly been covered by clouds. It now looked gloomy. It's snowing? How can it be? Qin Xingyan reached out to catch a snowflake. The crystal-clear hexagon immediately melted under the temperature of her hand. She frowned slightly. It's only autumn now and the temperature is... Many people on the road were still wearing short-sleeved dresses. Even Ing was wearing a short-sleeved dress. No one thought that it would snow in this kind of weather. The children seemed to be very happy about the snow, while the adults were amazed and dragged their children home to change clothes. Do you know what's going on? Su Shenxing suddenly turned around and asked the girl. I don't know. Ing replied without hesitation. But in her heart she felt that it was very likely that UK-004 had begun to affect the situation in this world. However, out of anger and the mentality of a public official who didn't want to get the two people in front of her involved in dangerous events, Ing didn't speak out her speculation. Qin Xingyan closed her eyes and stood in the snow to feel it. After a while she brushed off the snow on her shoulder and said to Su Shenxing, there's no demon aura mixed in it. It shouldn't be a trick of the monsters. Chapter 275. When they arrived at the back mountain of Jiangjin, Su Shenxing felt that something was wrong. I always feel that, it's too quiet. Qin Xingyan, who had been here with Su Shenxing, looked around and couldn't help muttering strangely. Because it wasn't late autumn yet, it was reasonable to say that even if it had started to snow, there should still be many animals moving around to store food for the winter. But they didn't even see a bird all the way up the mountain. I'm afraid that something has happened here. Su Shenxing frowned slightly, feeling that things didn't seem to be as simple as he thought. In fact, if an ordinary person came here, they would probably subconsciously not want to continue climbing the mountain after taking the first step. Then, unknowingly, they would leave this place to do other things. It wasn't a tactic similar to driving away idlers, but simply because this mountain was shrouded in a force that was close to death, all creatures would have a reaction of not wanting to get close to it. Just like if something sharp appeared in front of the eyes, people would subconsciously close their eyes. It was a kind of instinct. However, because Su Shinxing was a special individual, this kind of thing that was effective on ordinary people couldn't stimulate his survival instinct, so he didn't notice it at all. Qin Xingyan, on the other hand, needed to achieve a leakless body to become a cultivator. This was a sublimation on a biological level. Many human instincts would be gradually forgotten in this kind of cultivation. In addition, the energy in the air was not a real death aura, so it did not affect her. Therefore, she did not notice anything wrong. And Ying was not a person of this world in the first place, so she didn't know what the death was. Besides, she had destroyed several worlds, so in terms of death she was definitely 1 or 2 billion times stronger than the one shrouded in this mountain. So the three of them ran all the way to the place where the earth lowly lived. The dilapidated dormitory was much more desolate than it was in the summer. The originally verdant Boston ivy had almost withered, revealing the dormitory's mottled walls. The paint had been peeled off due to the construction of the dormitory, and most of it had been peeled off. "Earth, are you there?" Su Shinxing shouted first. However, the other party did not react. So he took out a few coins and threw them on the ground, trying to see if he could lure out the greedy lowly. However, there was still no response. Su Shinxing's heart sank. Did that guy go out, or did something happen to him? "Xingyan, do you know any earth escape spells?" He turned around and asked Qin Xingyan. "Earth escape is a basic escape technique. I know how to use it, but there are basically some special restrictions in the places where immortals live." It was snowing outside the window, but the room was very warm. If you looked carefully, you could see that although there was an air conditioner in the room, it was not turned on, and the heat came from the oil tank next to the bed. "Are you awake? This is Sakura Apartments." The one in charge of looking after her was the new god Chihaya Fukuyama, who had learned from her for a while. "Asahi has already gone to cook porridge for you. You can continue to rest for a while." "Why am I here? Could it be that I played games with Emily too late last night, so I stayed over?" The earth god mumbled strangely. "But why don't I have any memories of this?" Chihaya Fukuyama looked at the Huaxia god with a gentle, or rather pitiful, gaze. "How do you feel?" "Body? It's okay. It's just that my arm hurts a little." The earth god moved her arm. "Speaking of which, I had a nightmare yesterday. A demon suddenly broke my divine realm and stepped on me into the floor. It felt very real. Strange, I haven't had any dreams since I became a god." Chihaya Fukuyama suddenly felt that it was better not to tell the truth to the earth god who was once his teacher. "If I don't see the maids in disguise, I won't be able to rest in peace." Su Shinxing waved his hand and said righteously, how should I put it? Mr. Su, you look forward to it so much that I feel embarrassed." Asahi Sakurakanji scratched his face with a wry smile. In addition, there were also piercing glares from Song Yu and Qin Xingyan. "Mr. Landlord, your intentions are too obvious." Emily patted Su Shinxing's waist because she couldn't reach his shoulder. "Brother, if you don't mind, Chiketsu can wear it for you to see." Chiketsu comforted her in a low voice. Jasmine let out a short and strange sound like a kitten that had been stepped on. Then she stared at Ichiyue with a shocked expression that said, "Not good, the lowly character has been reused, and the one over there with the girly attribute seems even cuter." Chiketsu, who was stared at by her, blinked and then playfully stuck out his tongue at Emily. For some reason, Su Shinxing, who accidentally saw this scene, subconsciously thought of Chiketsu. Chiketsu-chan's Victorying, who didn't understand the situation at all, took a big sip of the tea that Asahi Sakurakanji made for her and then spat out the tea leaves. In short, Su Shinxing realized that he had inadvertently become the target of public criticism. He immediately changed the topic and said, "Mr. Landlord, don't just stand there, answer me." "Who's the Mr. Landlord?" "I'm the beautiful 11-year-old. The lowly waved her arms in dissatisfaction. "My Chinese isn't very good, but you can't use the word beautiful to describe an 11-year-old, right?" Miss Witch, who seemed to be a little silly, unintentionally gave the lowly a knowing blow. "Anyway, let's talk about this later." Because she couldn't think of a rebuttal, the lowly could only reluctantly say it. "You still want to talk about this later?" Song Yu was shocked. "Are all the immortals in the Celestial Empire like this?" Qin Xingyan seemed to be disillusioned with the Celestial Empire's system of deification. After arguing for a while, the topic finally returned to the right track. Although I've said it before, because there are more people, I'll say it again. After Su Xinxing asked Emoli to bring Chiketsu to play the game. For some reason, Su Xinxing felt that Emoli seemed to have an inexplicable competitive feeling towards little Chiketsu. The loli continued, there's a problem with Jiang Jin's earth veins. Hasn't this problem been solved? Su Xinxing asked curiously. In order to prevent the situation from worsening, Jasmine and I even made a trip to Fusang and brought back that thing called the Suppressing Creek seal. As he spoke, he glanced at the two beside him. And we also brought back other gifts. So we're just gifts for that thing. Wah, don't be discouraged. One day you'll also become the female lead. The Fusang duo hugged each other and acted out a small play. In fact, although the situation of the spirit veins has stabilized a little after obtaining the seal of suppression, the overall situation is still deteriorating. This situation hasn't changed, to be honest. It's already incredible that it can last until now. The loli sighed. Has this happened before? Su Xinxing couldn't help but ask. Yes. When it came to serious matters, the loli looked unexpectedly serious. I don't remember exactly how long it has been, but there was once an incident where the spirit veins were leaked. And because the spirit energy in that era was much higher than in the modern era, the consequences were very serious. Jiangjin almost became a dead zone, a paradise for demons. Then how was it solved that time? Su Xinxing continued to ask. Although there was a group of monsters like them, Jiangjin wouldn't become a paradise for demons. However, the leaking of the spirit veins would also affect the earth itself. If Jiangjin became a barren land, then as the guardian, Su Xinxing would be in a bit of an awkward situation. After all, Su Xinxing was very strong, but as the saying goes, every profession has its own specialization. Those arrogant and domineering city soldiers wouldn't necessarily know how to fix toilets, right? Hearing this, the others also showed an expression of concern. Human sacrifice. In that era, there was a girl with extremely strong spirit energy. In order to prevent the spirit veins from leaking and protect the safety of the people of Jiangjin, she was willing to use herself as a sacrifice. After creating a powerful sacrificial ceremony based on Nua's mending of the heavens, she used her own life to block the hole in the spirit veins. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.